Welcome to r/ Am I the Jerk, where Karen ditches her boyfriend for a party and really ends up paying for it. Am I the jerk for breaking up with and kicking my girlfriend out because she went to an after party without me? I, 24 male, and my girlfriend, 23 female, Anne, began dating in college. Last week, Anne invited me to her coworker, Joe's party. I had heard a lot about him in the past, and he and she really seemed to have a lot in common, especially with their taste in music. Apparently, he was an amateur musician with a fairly successful YouTube channel. Joe initially invited only Anne, but when she asked him if I could tag along, he said it was fine. The party was on Saturday evening. It was a fun party with about 30 people held at a restaurant Joe had rented out. Towards the end, though, I wandered into Anne's little discussion group, and I immediately got the feeling that nobody really wanted me there, most of all Anne. It was her, Joe, and a few other people. Thinking that I was just imagining things, I hung around and listened to Joe basically boast about himself the whole time. A little while later, I wandered off to get myself a drink and chat with a few other people. Eventually, the time to leave came around and I went to find Anne again. Joe approached me at that point and said he was having an after party over at his house. I was going to refuse, but then he said, "Sorry man, but only Anne is invited," while clapping me on the shoulder. I first told him not to touch me, and then I said she's not going. He informed me that she had already accepted the invitation. I texted Anne immediately to ask where she was. She responded, "Sorry, on the way to Joe's place. I'll see you tomorrow. Love you." I asked if she knew I wasn't invited, and she left me on read. Texts after that were all ignored. I drove home furious. I stayed up all night, and finally Anne walked in the door at 5:42 a.m. I know because I was by the window watching. I recognized the car is Joe's, and the driver is Joe. Nobody else was in the car. Anne waved to him cutely and laughed at something he said. Anne came inside and acted surprised to see me still up. At that point, I flatly told her that we were done, and she had the rest of the day to move out. Anne was at first confused with me, and then I told her that she can just move in with Joe. She rolled her eyes and said nothing happened. She gave me this spiel about my insecurities and imagination. I said it didn't matter. After this back and forth arguing, Anne finally relented and sarcastically thanked me for wasting the best years of her life. Anne finally moved out yesterday, and it was pretty dramatic. She said that she loved me and that I was throwing away everything over a party. Did I do her wrong here? I feel like I'm getting gaslighted. She left you at a party that she invited you to, went to another party without communicating with you, and ghosted you when you messaged her. I'm sorry, but she doesn't care about you or respect you. At least you are no priority, and her colleagues seem to be more important. I would never leave my partner I came with to a party stranded at a party and then gaslight them for being angry. Seems you're her safety person, the one who should wait for her and take care of her, and that's it. Not the jerk. Even if she didn't hook up with him, she left you at a party without saying goodbye and went to a party she knew you weren't invited to, doesn't respond to your text, doesn't tell you what's going on, and then tries to downplay your valid feelings. She has no respect for you. You absolutely made the right decision. You deserve better than that. My boyfriend asked me for $1,500 to buy a Halloween costume. I'm 22 female, and my boyfriend, male 26, we've been together for 4 years. I recently was asked by him if I could get a personal loan under my name so that he could buy a Halloween costume. I'm feeling a bit unsure of how upset I should be, or if I even should be upset about it. To explain his current situation, he currently has around $5,000 worth of debt and does not have a job and lives off of payments from the government currently. When he originally asked, I got quite upset since for the last year his financial situation has continued to get worse as I currently pay for his groceries and essentials, and without aid doesn't have basic essentials like toilet paper or soap, let alone food, and can only meet the payments of his rent at the moment. When he asked me for the loan, it was about $1,500, and he wanted to have me open a personal loan since no financial lenders would give him any more money than he currently has on loan. I don't know why I felt like it was my breaking point, but I just cried and told him he was childish for asking me for money to buy something so stupid, and haven't spoken to him for the last few days. He asked me for money when he's already relying on me to buy his groceries, and he's in so much debt from buying video games and action figures. I'm struggling to figure out what to even say to him. The reason he wants the loan so bad from me is for more of the same non-essential things that got him into debt in the first place. A custom-made Halloween costume seems like an outrageous thing to want to purchase in his current situation, and he doesn't see it as a big deal, since in his words, "It's not a lot of money for you." and I think I just need advice on what approach might work to help him understand. No matter how much I've tried to explain the strain his dependence on me to support him with his basic needs has been, I feel like my approach isn't working. I would appreciate advice on what steps I can take or what approach I might be able to use in regards to talking to him and trying to resolve this issue in our relationship currently. Tell him it's not a lot of money for you because you would never in a million years even contemplate something so foolish as taking out a 4-figure loan for a holiday that's months away and can be celebrated just as if not more effectively with an old bedsheet and a pair of scissors. Tell him no, or simply laugh as you walk away, hopefully for good, because I don't know why you're trying to convince yourself this is reasonable unless you want to spend the rest of your life in debt catering to an overgrown 5-year-old's every whim. OP. I think I'm struggling and rationalizing it because my boyfriend has already invested about $700 into the costume and has been stressing and nonstop talking to me and showing me pictures of what costume he wants and cried to me over the phone about how he has always wanted to dress up in this costume since he was a kid. He stressed about how life-changing this costume was, and then he told me, "I would happily starve for weeks if it means I can have this costume," which I really don't want him to have to do. He hasn't invested $700. He spent $700 that he doesn't have. This is hugely disturbing behavior. If he starves for weeks because of this costume, he wins a Darwin Award. Why are you still dating this idiot? OP. It's a Spider-Man costume with like ridged webbing and it's screen accurate to the amazing Spider-Man costume from the movies. Come on, have some respect for yourself. This man is already a clown. He doesn't need any costume. Update. I know I seem like an absolute idiot, but I think being with my boyfriend for so long, as well as since high school, made me feel extremely attached and like I wouldn't know what to do if he wasn't around. So in that way, I was definitely dependent on him. To clarify things, it was a Spider-Man costume, and no, I did not give him the money. I spoke to him and he tried explaining that it was his cousin who forced him to ask me for the money, which I didn't believe and ended the relationship since so many of your comments made me realize I have a seriously low standard for my dating pool and will have to reconsider my standards moving forward. I guess the reason I indulged this man for so long was because I felt pity for him and his situation. He lives off government disability payments, and I think as we progressed in our relationship, I slowly became his carer after his family moved away and had no one to take him to his appointments, especially after lockdown, his carer quit, so he didn't have someone to help him in his day-to-day tasks. I understand now that should have never been my job to pick up, and blurring those lines made me become financially and emotionally used as he had no one else to depend on. Anyways, I broke up with him. I'll try to listen to you guys and find someone who is more on my level of stability and self-reliance. I come from a developing country, so it really boggles my mind the government pays people like her ex-boyfriend money to do nothing but sit at home and play video games. My coworker is a totally normal person and he fascinates me. He has no mental health problems like everyone else here and most of the other people in my life. He isn't on any meds, he's physically healthy. I've had to explain my panic attacks, anxiety, my meds, being overwhelmed by basically everything and so much more to him because he's never experienced or heard of them. Almost everyone I know is a mess, and the contrast between them, myself, and him is amazing to me. It's like he's a machine. Just some other things. He's never late to work. He doesn't oversleep. He doesn't have trouble sleeping. He doesn't have meltdowns, tantrums, outbursts, or shutdowns. He isn't allergic to anything, and he has no food sensitivities, or at least none that he knows of. He works out every day, either at home or the gym. He has no chronic health issues. He doesn't get stuck or freeze or get trapped in a loop. He can drive without issue and knows how to get to where he wants to go without his phone. Detours don't cause him any issues. If things don't go to plan or have to change or just fall apart, he just adapts and moves on. He can just talk to people, males, females, just casual conversation. If a big choice has to be made, he just makes it. He does what he says he'll do when he says he'll do it, the way he says he'll do it. He can solve problems. There's no Googling, no looking it up. He just knows. He doesn't keep his phone on him all day. He just puts it away and has no need to look at it. He doesn't use social media, he doesn't follow it, and he doesn't care about it. When I graduated high school in 1991, I would have never dreamed in a million years that the fact I'm basically the guy in this post, I would be considered unusual in today's society. A normal dude who was transported here from the 80s before the internet, before GPS, and before social media. Rare nowadays. This all just sounds like normal adult living to me. It makes me sad for OP that this person sounds like a machine rather than just a healthy adult. This is an incredibly sad snapshot of society when someone healthy and mentally stable is looked at like a unicorn. Maybe if OP took up some of the lifestyle choices of this individual, they may have some success in overcoming a few of their issues. Also, would love to know the ages of OP and said dude. Dude works out, sleeps well, definitely eats well, and is healthy. Dude probably has micro good habits associated to these things. Most importantly, he probably doesn't care about the internet and isn't terminally online. Anyone here reading this, start exercising. It doesn't matter how much, or where, or how, as long as you're doing proper form and increasing intensity as you go. Start eating more healthy, varied foods. Avoid fast food like it wants to destroy you, because it does. Sleep before midnight and never sleep in too much. Have a habit of sleeping in a dark room and a bed that you only use for sleep. Also, try and reduce your time online. People suffering around the world is sad. Climate issues are sad. Might eventually catch up to you and impact you because the world is kind of connected now. But you can do nothing about it, except be a person who doesn't cause suffering in climate issues. That's it. That's all you can do. People don't matter unless they do. Your partner, kids, your family, best friend or two, that's about it. No one else really matters unless you're directly dealing with them. And get some sun for goodness sake and go out a bit, even for a walk near a park or something. Stop blue screen diet at home. I guarantee with zero doubt that anyone, no matter who, can start doing these things and be consistent in progress. Not even do them regularly, just each week doing better than the last. Then your life will immediately get better without any questions or hiccups. Stress is the core and base of all human issues. We're in a permanent fight or flight because of the lack of the things above. Our bodies are being destroyed, our brains are rotting and worried, we are malnourished and dehydrated and lacking sleep, and the world is collapsing around us. We're in a war without the war, and these things above help to disassociate from that. Wow, they should really have some classes on this kind of stuff in high school. I think it would really help a lot of people, to be honest. Yeah, and it would wreck corporate profits. You think big tech and pharmaceuticals want people to be healthy? Think again. My ex-boyfriend left me for my best friend, and now they want me to be a part of their wedding. 3 years ago, Josh, my boyfriend of about a year and a half, broke up with me because he had feelings for Anna, my best friend. We hung out a lot, and they said that they eventually developed feelings for each other. They admitted that Josh had been cheating on me. They made a fool out of me. They made me think that everything was okay when it really wasn't. If they admitted it at that time, I would have tried to be understanding and try to support them, but they chose to lie. So I cut them both off. I focused on school and found a job with a good income. Josh and Anna tried to reach out to me at first, telling me that they still wanted to be friends, but I blocked them. Now I'm living in the town next to our hometown. I got a wonderful job opportunity, so I moved, but I liked that I was still close enough to visit my parents and other relatives. About a month ago, I heard about their wedding from a common friend. It didn't really bother me anymore, so I just went on with my life. A week ago, I received a message from Anna telling me she and Josh were getting married and that they would like me to be a part of their wedding party. I replied, "Congratulations, no thank you." I had no feelings for Josh anymore, and I've even been seeing someone else, but I don't want to celebrate the wedding of two people who betrayed me. They were insistent. Josh also messaged me via a different phone number. Some of my friends also tried to convince me to come to the wedding. I firmly said no. Even my mom called me asking if I was going, and when I said no, she sounded disappointed, but she didn't push it. This is all just weird to me. Why would you want your ex-girlfriend and ex-best friend, the girl you cheated on, to be part of your wedding party? The day before yesterday, Anna's parents called me, telling me that they missed me and really hoped I could go to the wedding. I firmly said that I would not be going. Her mom went off on me, saying that I should let bygones be bygones and that I should be happy for her daughter. I asked her if I cheated with Anna's boyfriend and then invited her to the wedding, would she convince Anna to go? She had no answer to this, and I hung up. This is getting out of hand because I'm receiving more than 20 to 30 calls and texts a day from their friends and family about the wedding. Any advice on how to handle this? Also, any insight on why they want me to go to their wedding? I don't think it's normal that they're this insistent. Update. Anna messaged me with a different number. I don't know how she got my number. Also, my hometown is a small town, and most of our friends did know that I was cheated on. That's why this seems so weird to me. I did block the people who were very insistent, including the new numbers of Anna, Josh, and Anna's mom. Also, I keep blocking the people that text me about the wedding, but new numbers just keep popping up, which makes it more weird that people are actually making an effort to get new numbers just so I would attend an ex's wedding. I'm gonna talk to a close friend who lives in my hometown. She hates Anna for what she did to me, and she may know what's going on. That's all for now. They want you at the wedding to help relieve their own guilt. They think it will make people think that all is forgiven and forgotten, when in reality, no one will ever trust these two people with their partners or friends. Let them rot, and if people go on, cut contact with them too. Am I the jerk for agreeing with my mom that it's kind of pathetic the way my wife can't cook? I, 28 male, have been married to my wife, 31 female, for about a year. Overall, things are great, but one thing that's been bugging me is that my wife doesn't know how to cook at all. I've always been the one to handle meals, which I was fine with in the beginning because I enjoy cooking. But over time, it started to wear on me, especially when I come home after a long day at work and still have to cook dinner while she relaxes. She refuses to cook and claims there's nothing wrong with not being able to cook. It's been an ongoing issue between us. I've been trying to teach her, but she's really bad at it. Many conversations about this. The other night, my mom, who's 56, came over for dinner. As usual, I was in the kitchen preparing everything, and my wife was sitting with my mom. At one point, my mom offered to help, and I asked if she could make the gravy or cut some fruit. My wife was standing around in the kitchen when my mom handed her a knife and asked her to cut some fruit while she handled the gravy. My wife couldn't figure out how to hold it properly and ended up making a mess. My mom watched her fail to cut the fruit and then blurted out, "It's honestly kind of pathetic that you don't even know how to cut a piece of fruit at your age." She then went behind her and started to guide her on how to cut stuff, like with someone who's first learning. My wife kind of shrugged and finished cutting her fruit with my mom guiding her. Dinner happens, and I noticed my wife was not happy the whole night. My mom left, and she was upset I didn't defend her, that I embarrassed her by letting it happen. We got into a bad argument, and I told her that it is kind of pathetic that she can't even cut fruit. She's literally older than me and can't hold a knife properly. She told me that's not the point, and I needed to defend her, and it's not her fault she's bad at cooking. I point out it is, and she's embarrassed because not being able to hold a knife properly is embarrassing for an adult. My wife thinks I'm a huge jerk. Update. I definitely think it's weaponized incompetence. I will suggest marriage counseling and cooking classes. If things don't change, I will be out. I will make this very clear. Also, for those asking, it was strawberries. She was smushing them and cutting them with the stem still on. Info. Does she do the dishes or help clean up? I don't think it really matters which partner does the cooking necessarily, as long as the other one is helping, and the standard deal that almost everyone seems to follow is that if one person cooks, the other person cleans up. In my house, my wife usually cooks and I usually clean, which is fine because she enjoys cooking and is good. I'm okay. I can cook, but she's definitely better than me. My mom and stepfather, though, are essentially the opposite. She got home from work late usually and isn't a great cook anyways, so he cooks and she does the dishes. And yes, it is kind of pathetic that she can't even use a knife. Even if you aren't a good cook, you should at least be able to figure out how to hold a knife. That's just silly. OP. No, not really. I usually clean as a cook, so not much to do, and I don't really count putting your dish in the dishwasher to be much. Everyone sucks here. Your mom shouldn't have called her pathetic, and I can see why your wife would be hurt that you didn't say anything to defend her. You shouldn't have called her pathetic either. That isn't constructive and will only make her feel hurt and defensive. It isn't fair for her to expect you to do all the cooking and needs to make a reasonable effort to learn, especially something as basic as holding a knife. Did she not have a parent who could teach her? It might not necessarily be her fault that she never learned when she was young, but she does need to be open to learning more now so it doesn't all fall on you. As an adult, she's the only one responsible now for her gaps in knowledge and has ample resources to fill them. At this point, it's weaponized incompetence on her part since she refuses to even try. Not the jerk. These comments are wild. Every adult should know basic cooking skills in order to feed themselves, such as using a knife safely to cut fruit. She had this coming to her one way or another, honestly. Pathetic is a pretty vicious thing to call someone. Not every opinion needs to be voiced out loud. I suspect you liked your mom slamming your wife's lack of cooking skills because it felt like a win for you, but it felt like a loss for your wife, and it felt like another loss when you just sat there and let her take that attack. I suspect the effect of it all is that your wife will be much more resistant to helping with the cooking, so this will turn out to be a lose-lose situation. You're the jerk for marrying someone who doesn't even know how to cook. I know pickings are slim in the dating market these days, but I can't imagine marrying someone who is literally that pathetic. Your mom was entirely correct. You think your wife is going to make a good mother for your future kids when she literally can't even cut fruit? You dudes out here wifing tatted up, blue-haired chicks who can't cook and have more psychological damage than Gotham City, and you wonder why they don't respect you and your relationships never last. And obligatory, imagine if the genders were flipped. Do you think these comments would be defending the man who can't even cut fruit and his wife has to do all the cooking? Heck nah. They would all be agreeing that he is pathetic and saying to leave him, calling him a man-child. Neighbors turn their house into a very loud public church service every Sunday, and their son is a creep. So we just had new neighbors move into the house next to ours, and they've been extremely annoying. Firstly, they convert their front garage and driveway into a church every Sunday. They line up chairs and invite people over and preach loudly on a podium. It literally lasts all day with catering in the works. When they're not doing this, they're loudly practicing their preach sermons in the garage throughout the week. Look, I have no issues with religious folk in general, but it's just so loud and annoying, to be honest. Like, can't they just go to a normal church instead of converting their house into one? Is this even legal to do so? Why subject your neighbors to this? Second, the family has a son, probably in his 20s, who harasses both me, female 25, and my older sister. He stares at us very creepily and stops us literally every time he sees us outside. He asks us really weird questions, trying to hit on us, I guess. He once chased my car as I was pulling out of the driveway to ask me what day it was. Recently, as I pulled up into the driveway, he stood behind my car on my property, staring at me and literally waiting for me to get out so he could speak to me. I was stuck in my car for literally 5 to 10 minutes to wait for him to leave, and he waited the whole time. I just got out, made eye contact with him while ignoring what he said, and stormed inside. Like, it's really getting in the way of my life. Now, I usually run from my car to my front door and the other way around so as to not be spoken to or stared at creepily. What really set me off recently was that I caught him staring at me through my window from a distance. Now I have to keep my curtains and blinds closed permanently, which is not the greatest thing for my mental health. This entire situation is making my anxiety spike so high, I really shouldn't feel unsafe in my own property. Other than all of this, there haven't been any other confrontations or issues with the family in general. It seems like they're really extroverted and have made attempts to get to know us, but I'm afraid if I accuse their son of this stuff, they'll deny it since they're children of God, or whatever religious folks say, or retaliate. I've daydreamed of blasting music from my car during their sermon, but I don't want to start drama. Any thoughts or advice? Set up cameras to catch anything just in case. They're fairly cheap, and you should document the creepiness in case it's needed for later. Call the city or the cops about the Sunday thing. I'm sure they are not zoned for church services, so it is a legitimate complaint. Well, what would you do in this situation? Would you call the cops or try to get them to stop, or not? Please let us know. I'd go out there and mow my lawn while blaring some Cannibal Corpse. You be inconsiderate of me? Two can play that game, boyo. Am I the jerk for ransacking my boyfriend's apartment after he stole my passport to prevent me from going on my trip? I, female 25, have been with my boyfriend Jake, male 34, for 8 months. Things were fine until I, against my better judgment, moved into his place a couple of months ago. Since then, he's been getting kind of possessive and protective. I immediately told him to cut that crap out because it's off-putting and things seem to get better. Anyway, I have a friend in Mexico who's getting married. I've been excited to fly down for her wedding since she told me she was engaged a year ago. However, Jake has made it clear that he doesn't want me to go. He says it's too dangerous, even though I've been there many times and I even lived there for a year. I speak Spanish, I have friends there, and I know my way around. No matter what I say, he doesn't want me to go. Then a couple of days ago, my passport went missing from my nightstand. I'm supposed to go tomorrow, so I wouldn't have time to get a new one. I looked everywhere, no luck. When I asked Jake about it, he behaved a little suspiciously, but I dismissed it because I couldn't believe he would actually take my passport to keep me from going. But he's been giving me some red flags, so I decided to have a thorough look around. When he went out this morning, I started going through everything. As I searched, I became increasingly certain that he took my passport. I started off carefully picking through drawers and cabinets, but as my anger grew, I became a lot less careful. I started turning out drawers, pried open a briefcase, made a total mess, but I found it. It was behind some books on the bookcases in his study. I never go into his study. He definitely put it there. Now he's furious with me for going through his things and ransacking his place. He said he would have given my passport back and there was no need for me to go crazy. I'm just angry that he took it to begin with, and I don't believe him when he says he was going to give it back. This is only my third serious relationship, and I have no perspective on this kind of thing. Am I the jerk for overreacting and ransacking my ex-boyfriend's place? Edit. Thanks for the replies. I guess I was still in a weird state of disbelief that he did that, and it made me question everything. Now that I've stopped shaking and have had time to think, talk to my mom, and to read through these replies, I feel kinda silly for even wondering if I did something wrong. Suffice it to say, it's over for good. I've blocked him on everything, and my dad and brother are over there getting what's left of my stuff. I'm going to try to put it out of my mind and focus on my awesome trip. Not the jerk. Move out immediately and don't look back. This is the start of a horrible relationship. He's starting lightly so that you get used to it. That you even question that you're a jerk for looking for your passport that he stole means that he's already succeeding. For your future safety, run. You are not in so deep that you can't get out. OP, thank you. I'm at my parents' house now, and my dad told me the exact same thing. It's good to hear it from other people. Can we get a standing ovation for Dad here? Gold star for being in your corner and protecting you. I know a lot of young people who wouldn't have been able to rely on their parents for help in this or a similar situation. Big Reddit love, Dad. Not the jerk. This is the beginning of a true crime podcast that's gonna freak me out for weeks. OP, my dad is awesome. Using my parking space without my permission? All good. You will be using it forever. So I'm living in Japan now, and here people ride bicycles a lot. You can't leave your bike anywhere and you have to pay for parking, between $1 and $2 per day. There are very few free parking areas for bicycles. Most people leave their bikes at the same place, so they pay monthly because it's cheaper and you have your own space. This started a couple of weeks ago. Someone in my building started having a guest who decided to steal my bicycle parking space whenever they came to visit. Sometimes they stayed the whole night, so I had to go to the station, pay $1, and come all the way home walking, which meant I would need to walk to the station the next day, getting up earlier, walking like 20 minutes to the station while carrying my heavy bag. All the bicycle spaces have a number, which means they are reserved for someone. Mine is 105, but this jerk decided to take mine whenever they came to visit. The second time this happened, I told the building manager, but they didn't do anything. The third time I saw the bicycle there, it was the same red expensive bicycle. I left a note in Japanese saying, "Please don't leave your bicycle here. This is my space and I'm using it every day." I found the note taped, with the tape I used to tape it on their bike, to my parking space, and it had some mean words in Japanese at the end. Basically, he was not only stealing my space, but making fun of me by insulting me. Fine. It's just fine. I probably wouldn't have done anything about it if he hadn't written those words. This triggered me and got the worst in me. This person did it again a couple of times, so I knew this would continue. I was thinking about buying another bicycle, a better, more expensive one I could use to go on cycling trips, so a good chain/lock was needed anyway. I bought one of the thickest they had at the store and decided to try its efficiency. I locked his bicycle next time I saw it there. It hasn't moved for the last 7 days. There were 2 notes. The first one was an aggressive note with more mean words and threats about going to the police, which I don't care. Let's go that way, buddy. Second note, days later, was an apology, and they begged for me to unlock the bike because they tried to break it, but they couldn't. I guess he has learned his lesson. I'm pretty sure he won't do it again, but I just want to enjoy this feeling of victory a couple of more days. I will free it in 2 to 3 days, I guess. Tell him he also needs to pay your parking fee for the month before you'll unlock it. He was using up your space, so he should also pay for it. OP. Oh, that's good. Didn't think about that. Am I the jerk for refusing to get on a flight? My boyfriend's parents paid for them, my boyfriend's siblings, and their significant others to all go on a flight to Cabo for spring break. Becky, his mom, hasn't seemed to like me for some reason. She always makes snide remarks about my parents' blue-collar jobs and my field being nursing. We get to the airport, and Becky got 7 other people's first-class tickets and me 1 coach ticket. She told me I was used to it, and she had a free coach ticket, so I should be grateful for going. They all did their express check-ins and left me in the long line for me to think about what the heck was going on. I had to keep from crying the whole time in line. I got up to the counter, and there was a baggage fee for me. My boyfriend at the time never once helped me through the coach line or said anything to his mom. I looked over at his mom's smug face as I was about to pay the check bag fee, and I let out all of my frustrations on the attendant and started crying. Basically, she said, "Don't go with that family, sweetie. They don't appreciate you." I continued to cry and took my luggage and got out of the line with a super sweet check-in woman. I was so upset on how I was being treated, and I started crying at my boyfriend at the airport about how his mother was treating me. I broke up with him at the airport, and his mother was so embarrassed. I told her what a jerk she was. My boyfriend has been blowing up my phone, saying how could I do that to his mother and just back out of a vacation very last minute and wasted everyone's time and money. Not the jerk. The check-in lady was correct. If you would have gotten on that flight, you would have been treated like this for the entire vacation. It was absolutely the right decision to stand up for yourself. As for wasting money, she said the ticket was free, and I'm sure she didn't spend much on your hotel accommodations. As far as wasting time, you wasted enough of your own time on a relationship with your boyfriend if he isn't going to stand up for you. They're going to say that you should be happy for any kind of vacation and not look down on a coach ticket, but his mother was being pointedly rude to you. I love this reply, and I'm glad OP didn't put up with it. Life's much too short to associate with people who want to treat you like crap and pretend you like it. Was the boyfriend actually planning on sitting in first class and leaving OP alone in coach? What a useless jerk. Oh, and then the biggest concern, with his girlfriend in tears, is his poor mom being embarrassed. I'm at a loss for words to describe this waste of oxygen. This is the reason it sucks to be in a relationship with people raised by narcissists. If they haven't realized how much their parents suck, they will just act like flying monkeys and gaslight you. They have no idea what reality is. They only know the worldview of their narcissistic parents. I served a table where the wife tried to talk down on me, but her husband was on my side. It was a couple and their teenage daughter. At first, the table seemed very rude. Right off the bat, the wife was trying to treat me like crap and asking ridiculous questions, but gotta give everyone good service. So they ordered appetizers right away, but needed some time to figure out entrees. I kept checking back and even dropped their apps, and they still hadn't decided. Okay, fine. I let them take their time, checked back to fill drinks, and they were finally ready after they finished their apps. They ordered ribs, a whole sunfish, and a beef short rib. Entrees came out, and I checked to see if everything is fine and that it tasted good. Everyone said yes, and just as I'm about to leave, the wife says, "When I ordered the fish, I wasn't expecting it to be a whole fish. If it's going to be a whole fish, you should advertise it and tell us." And here we go, with customers trying to be smarter than the server and telling the server the menu didn't say that. So I told her, "We do advertise it as a whole fish. On the menu, it clearly states the dish is a crispy whole sunfish." The wife starts to say something back, but her husband quickly shuts it down and said, "It's fine. You're not the one eating it. I am, because I ordered it." He turns to me and says, "It's fine. I wanted this, and it tastes amazing." At this point, his wife was looking very upset because she just failed at trying to be mean to her server. The rest of the dinner, the husband was extra nice to me and shut down anything else from his wife if she tried to treat me like crap. When I came to pre-bus their table, he told me he knew it was going to be a whole fish. He had just expected the fish to be lying flat on the plate, but he was still impressed with how amazing it looked. At our restaurant, the fish is presented standing up, but it's part of the experience of getting that fish. The man ended up tipping me 25%, and as they were leaving, I overheard him being annoyed with his wife and how she acted. It's an amazing feeling when someone at the table won't let their friends or family be mean to their server and shuts them down for it. Doesn't happen often. Am I the jerk for choosing to house one son and kicking out the other after finding out what he did to his brother? What's going on right now has been really difficult on everyone. My son Jack, 26 male, just left his wife of 3 years after finding out that she's been having an affair. He didn't want me to know the details at all, just insisted only me and him spend time together somewhere in public. I thought it was because he just didn't want anyone to know what was going on, but it was really because my other son, Andrew, 27 male, was living with me and he didn't want to see him. Jack told me he's been running out of money and can't afford the motel he's staying at right now, but he refused to come back to live with me while he goes through the divorce. He finally told me Andrew is the one his wife cheated with. To say I was disgusted and horrified is an understatement. That night, I gave Andrew a piece of my mind and told him he's no longer welcome in my home. The reason he was living with me was also because of his financial problems since he was out of work due to lockdown. This entire time, he knew what was going on, but acted like the innocent party until I confronted him. He pleaded with me not to throw him out when he has no place to go to, but I told him as of right now, I only have one kid, because we sure as heck didn't raise our kids to betray their own family and involve themselves in someone else's marriage. Since he's been living with me a while, he was given a time frame to pack up his things and leave. Once he was out, Jack came to stay with me, but haven't heard the end of it from my ex-in-laws or his mom, who conveniently cannot house him either, for one thing because they're back in their home country and they're yelling at me for playing favorites with my kids and punishing Andrew when he was already in a rough spot. They believe, as their father, I should have mediated between them so they could learn to live together. But I wasn't about to put Jack through that. He wants nothing to do with Andrew, and I feel like I need to respect that, not make them hug it out and make up. I'm also just very angry at Andrew, and frankly, don't want to be around him at all either. Yes, right now he's stuck crashing at different friends' houses. He keeps begging to come back because everything has been hard. Does it make me a jerk to not help him out? Not the jerk. Andrew can go live with his brother's ex-wife since he wants to be with her so bad. I'd never want to put my kid in a situation like that either. I respect you for thinking of your son's feelings. A betrayal like that, and I'd never want to look at that jerk again. It's one thing to be cheated on, but cheated on with your own brother had to suck. And for him to knowingly and willingly hook up with his brother's wife? Nope. I personally wouldn't claim him either. Not the jerk. OP. My kids have done many things in the past that have really upset me beyond belief. However, this was the first time in my life I was truly unable to look at one after finding out what he had done. I just couldn't do it. It didn't feel fair to Jack for me to try pushing him to make amends with the last person he wants to see right now. He cries himself to sleep every night, and during the day, he's just so detached from everything. It's hard to see your son hurting that way and not to be angry at the one responsible for it, his ex and brother. Am I the jerk for being angry with my fiancé over the prank he pulled? I, 28 female, and my fiancé, 28 male, have been together for 8 years. We met during college and are both really excited for the future. He has a twin brother that lives overseas. They look exactly very closely alike. It's hard to tell the difference at times. I've met his brother a few times over the years. He hasn't been able to visit due to lockdown. My family was having a large reunion this past weekend. My fiancé complained about the reunion and told me he could not attend. I told him that it would mean a lot to me and he could meet more of my relatives. The day of the reunion, he tells me that he will meet me there. I get to the reunion and I see him sitting in his car. He was wearing a baseball hat and seemed in a good mood. While we were chatting with family members, my aunt asked him what he did for a living and he answered. I started to see something off, but kept my mouth shut. When I got home, I saw my fiancé sitting on the couch playing a video game. I asked if he had a good time at the reunion, and he told me he did. I then asked for him to tell me what my cousin's name was. He thought about it for a long minute and then started laughing. He told me that his twin brother attended the reunion, and he was dropped off by a friend. I was so angry with him that I asked him to leave so I could think everything through. He went to stay with a friend, and I'm still so devastated that he would pull this kind of prank on me. My parents are very upset with him and are being very supportive. He thinks I'm being dramatic and there was no harm in what he did. Am I the jerk for being angry with my fiancé over the prank he pulled? Not the jerk. That wasn't a prank, but a horrible stunt attempt for him to avoid a family reunion. I would evaluate this relationship and ask if pulling that prank was really worth upsetting his future in-laws, not to mention how the extended family will feel if they find out this stunt. Yeah, not the jerk. It's honestly really weird though. It's like they watched way too many kids shows where the twins swap places and thought it would still be hilarious even though they're grown men. Not the jerk. And remember this rule. A prank is only funny if both people are left laughing. Just because he thinks it's harmless doesn't mean that you do. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her fiancé? Please let us know. This is why you never try to reenact a 90s sitcom in real life. Am I the jerk for not letting my niece be the flower girl and instead having my cat be the flower boy? My husband, 35 male, and I, 29 female, are getting married in May. It's important to note that him and my in-laws are incredibly wealthy and practically throw money around like it's nothing. They paid for our wedding in full. My sister, 34 female, and I were always close, But once I started dating my fiance, she started distancing herself from me. And when I confronted her about it, she claimed that she felt like I was becoming snobby and rude with my new lifestyle, and that it would be best for her mental health if we went low contact. We haven't talked that much for the past 3 years because of this, and I respect her choice. Last December, at my family reunion, I announced my engagement, and everyone congratulated me except for my sister. I didn't think much of it, but it still hurt a lot. 2 months ago, I invited my parents to see the wedding venue, and this is when I brought up the idea of making my cat the flower boy. Everyone who was there at the time, my husband, in-laws, and parents, all thought it was a great and cute idea. So I bought a white dress for him, and we've been practicing his walk down the aisle since then. No one else knew about this, but about 2 weeks ago, my sister called me out of the blue to discuss my wedding with me. This was extremely weird, but I thought this was a chance for us to get close again. Once she brought up the flower boy, or flower girl though, I knew where the conversation was going. She has 3 kids, who are 8, 6, and 3. She brought up the idea of the oldest being the flower girl, and I told her what my plan was and that it was set in stone that my cat would be the flower boy. She sounded shocked and asked why I didn't think of my niece, and I just told her that she didn't cross my mind when thinking about it. She went off on this whole tangent about how I was a terrible sister, daughter, and aunt, then hung up on me. A while later, I started getting phone calls from my family about how selfish I was being and that I was making a dumb choice. She made a Facebook post about the phone call. I called her back the next day to confront her about it, and she said that the money really got to my head if I thought of a stupid cat instead of my own niece, and I told her that once she had her own wedding, she could make her own daughter the flower girl. This hit a nerve for her, as she had kids out of wedlock and has been struggling financially for a long time, so a wedding for her is unattainable. I also uninvited her to my wedding, and since then, lots of family members have come to basically shame me for my decision to make my cat the flower boy instead of my niece, and that I should re-invite my sister as she's been depressed ever since I uninvited her. This whole ordeal has really taken a toll on me, and even my parents called to say that I should have just changed my plans or had a small ceremony afterwards where my cat was the flower boy, but left the main event with my niece as the flower girl. So, am I the jerk for making my cat the flower boy? Let me get this straight. She goes low contact, but demands privileges as she wishes? Not the jerk. Not the jerk. You're living my dream. I wanted my old man, 18-year-old black cat we rescued when he was a tiny kitten, to be in a carrier so he would be part of the wedding in some way. He passed before I was able to do so. Please do this. It's going to be an amazing memory for you to always have. Whoever's throwing a fit over this doesn't deserve to be at your wedding, to pet your cat, or eat your food. I'd start snipping the list. Get your kitty some amazing cat trees, tons of treats, catnip galore with the money you end up saving. OP. He's also pretty old. Adopted him from a shelter he had been at for a few years, since most people want kittens instead of older cats. But he's the sweetest boy and loves being around people. Rest in peace to your cat. You sound like a great owner. Karen cousin tried to steal my boyfriend. I, 18, male, have been with my boyfriend, 18, male, and we've been together since May of 2019. Last year, when everything started to shut down, my parents offered to let my cousin, Amy, 18, female, stay with us as she is immunocompromised, and her parents are both doctors, where mine are both able to work from home. Everything was fine for a while. We mostly kept to ourselves, did our schoolwork, and spent time online with our friends. A few weeks in, I was set in the kitchen on FaceTime with my boyfriend. Usually I would have done this in my room, but my dad's office is next to my room and he was on an important work call. She came in to get something and must have glanced over my shoulder and seen him. When I had ended the call, she asked who he was. I told her he was my boyfriend and she just made the comment that he was cute. At the time, it didn't seem like it was going to be a big deal. But after that, whenever I tried to have a call with my friends or my boyfriend, she would come into my room. She tried to play it off as wanting to ask me a question, but it was happening too often, and she would keep asking, "Don't I get to say hi?" which I found odd. We go to different schools, and she had never met my friends or shown any interest in them before this point. And if my phone rang while we were in the same room, she would always ask if it was the cute boyfriend, and she started making comments about how she wished she had met him first. I asked her to stop as it was making me feel uncomfortable. It got worse. She found him on Facebook and started sending flirty messages to him. He blocked her and she made a second account and continued until he blocked her again. She then got into my phone and found his number and started texting and calling him. She would leave voicemails, and it was always about how good she would be as his girlfriend and how he should leave me for her and everything she would do for him. He blocked her number. I told my parents what she was doing and showed them the proof, and they told her that she had to leave because she was making me so uncomfortable. I've not spoken to her since. My extended family are now trying to make plans for this summer, hoping everyone can get together. I'm refusing to go to anything she's at because I feel she would just try again. Everyone except my parents are telling me that I'm ruining the plans just to be spiteful, as she has apologized. A non-sincere apology when she realized my parents were serious about her going back home. I feel like a jerk because it means we can't have any family plans, and I'm essentially making everyone choose between us. But I don't want to be around her if she's going to keep making me uncomfortable. You want the police involved? Okie dokie. So, the day after Christmas, about 10 years ago, my brother called me up and asked me for some assistance setting up some of his new computer equipment. He lived down the road from a store that specialized in discount china, so naturally it was extremely busy. Busy as in cars were parked everywhere, including on the grass in front of the store, and it was impossible to see around the corner if someone wanted to pull out of the furthest exit. Unfortunately, the speed limit, 50 miles per hour, is also extremely high on the road as well, even if you have to really try to accelerate to get to 50 miles per hour by the time you pass the store. So I decided to play it safe and was doing roughly half the speed limit, perhaps 30 miles per hour, while going around the corner of the store. Even at this speed, of course, some guy decided to pull out without checking, and I couldn't stop in time to avoid hitting him. Now, I was driving an older Mitsubishi that already had some damage, and he had a small dent in his fender. And come on, it's still Christmas, right? So I get out of the car, take a look at the damage, and turn around to see a furious, older, red-faced gentleman in front of me. Right after I tell him that it doesn't really look like much damage, so there's no need to contact the police, he proceeds to scream in my face about how I was speeding and this is all my fault. Oh, no, honey. A young woman driving by herself may appear to be easily intimidated, but I was trying to be nice. If you want the police involved, let's do it, buddy. I called the non-emergency line, explained there was a very minor car accident and that the other driver was insisting that it was my fault, so I would feel better if the police were involved. The dispatcher got my information, stopped for a moment, and then quietly thanked me for calling the appropriate number. 911 was hardly necessary, and then told me that she also felt it would be safer for me if the police were dispatched. After a 30-minute wait, an officer showed up to the scene. I, not being a total moron, sat quietly in my car and waited for him to come over to me. The other driver felt it was necessary to leap out of his vehicle and run over to the officer and start screaming and gesturing wildly. I didn't catch what was said, but I did see the look on the cop's face, and I was getting more and more amused. After being clearly told to get back into his car, the cop came over to me and asked me what happened. I told him what was going on, and that not only had I not deliberately sped up to go the speed limit, I had actually slowed down because of how busy the business was. He nodded and went back to measure the skid marks on the road and confirmed he believed I was actually doing about 25 and complimented my thinking on safe driving in this specific situation. He then proceeded to write the other driver a ticket, and the other driver pulled out of the parking lot a second time with his window down, giving me the bird. At this point, the cop came over to me, explained that he wrote it up as the other driver's fault for more than $1,000 due to the damage on his fender. He also stated that, "Darling, I don't do this often, but I believe you should take that man's insurance company for every dime you can get. Thanks for insisting we call the police." Make me hourly instead of salary because you're afraid I'll stop selling after I hit my commission cap? Okay. Years ago, I was an inside sales rep for a simultaneously large and tiny company in a niche market. The quotes are because it was at least equally outside sales. I just didn't go outside except to smoke. I've since quit. They had about 50 branches across the country of various sizes. The smallest was literally one guy who processed local orders and used hotshots for delivery. The largest had about 50 employees. I made 6 for my branch. I was literally the first salesman with a background in anything resembling sales that my branch had ever hired. They had always hired the least socially awkward industry professionals they could prior to me, and they had had their CSR doing the selling for over a year until I came on, so expectations were high. When they hired me, we had somewhat heated negotiations over the comp plan. It was a $42,000 base salary plus commission with a $56,000 OTE and $65,000 cap. I asked what I was meant to do after I hit the cap, to which they replied, "Continue to do your job," as if I wasn't going to have a problem with generating new business for free. I said that I was going to need a bonus structure beyond the cap if they wanted me to do any more hunting after that point. I made it clear that I'd service my accounts when they called, but I wanted to be clear that they were going to be disappointed if they expected me to make outbound calls looking for new business after I had maxed my comp plan, and that I'd definitely enjoy the extra time at home with my family over the holidays. They said they understood, and we went through the onboarding. I worked almost exactly 40 hours for almost 2 months, early October to early December, before I had jury duty and missed a day. My check was about $150 light compared to what it had been, so I complained to payroll. Benefits kicked in at 90 days. That's when I found out I was making $21 an hour and was not, in fact, pulling a salary. Presumably, this was to force me into the office, as we didn't have remote access to the local network that logged our hours, just the ordering/inventory software. I didn't even get a prorated Christmas bonus because that counts as benefits, and you have to work 90 days to receive those. Cue malicious compliance. I discovered that if I left the house 30 minutes early, my 80-minute commute would take less than 25. So instead of showing up around 8:30 and chilling in my car for a bit, so I was working at 9, I was there at 7 with the warehouse guy sending emails. I started working through lunch as I ate at my desk, as opposed to burning an hour off campus or in the break room. I didn't even realize I was losing an hour a day to lunch. I also discovered that if I stayed till 6:30, I'd get home by 7, as opposed to leaving a little after 5 and getting home around 6:30. So I spent an extra 5 hours a week away from home and worked an extra 22 compared to the 35 I was getting paid for before I figured it out. With the overtime, I was clocking north of $2,000 more than intended every month. And oddly enough, no one even noticed until the internal auditor verified W-2s and noticed that I made significantly more than the branch manager. I didn't hit my commission cap until late November, so I spent the rest of the year training with the tech and/or the warehouse guy. Both of them smoked. They tried to put me on the same salaried comp plan I had originally agreed to, but it was enough of a pay cut to qualify for constructive dismissal, so I got to quit and still collect unemployment for a month before I found another gig. Neighbor trespasses on my property and threatens to post a story about me on Reddit. I'm posting this because I was told I'd end up on Reddit, and my kids told me this is likely what the person meant. So I live in an area that's seeing a lot of new builds. My husband and I have the last large lot on our street, lived here for 20 plus years. Probably 800 people lived here when we bought our house. Now it's over 10,000 people. It's about 1.5 acres. We installed a big play area a few years ago for our nieces, nephews, and eventual grandkids. It's on the opposite side of our lot, pretty far away from the house. There's a path that goes from our second driveway. It's landscaped, and we purchased it from a contractor who was replacing some other park, so I can see how people mistake it as a town park. This happens often that people stop to play, and I usually don't care. But we don't encourage it, as we have 2 giant dogs who will bark at strangers who come in the yard. I put up some blatant signs that say private property and beware of dog. Right now it's still cold here. It's an early Friday morning, and I open the door to let the dogs out. They stay in the yard and ignore anything outside the yard. The dogs start barking. I hear yelling. I run outside. There's a couple and their kid playing on the playground. I call the dogs back and put them in the house. I go over to apologize and let them know it's not a public park. As soon as I get within earshot, the mom starts yelling, "What is wrong with you? We're calling animal control on you. Who lets their dogs just run around a park? Get a fence." I hate confrontation, so I get a bit shaky. I tell her it's not a park, it's my yard. She says, "Get out of here. Get away from us." I point to the signs and tell her again that it's not a park, it's our yard, and they need to leave. She starts going off about how it's illegal to leave a play area open. It isn't. And it's illegal to let your dogs off leash in this neighborhood. It isn't. There are almost no bylaws here yet. I tell them again to just leave and that they weren't allowed to be on our property. My dogs are in the big window barking, and her husband is screaming that I should train my dogs before they hurt someone. They're bred to guard and detain intruders. Historically, we don't train them as guard dogs. This upset me more than anything because I'm an irrational animal lover. I called the police. When they saw I was on the phone with the cops, They started shouting about me being a Karen and started getting in their car. Their poor kid was crying, and the woman said, "Watch what happens when you end up on Reddit and we tell people where you live." So here you go, Reddit. My kids checked and didn't find anything about it here, so I'll post it first, and I hope she does post something. I'm sorry my dog scared them, but the screaming and threatening was so over the top and honestly deranged. My kids want me to end this by asking if I'm the jerk because I'm old and I want people to get off my lawn. Everyone is saying install a fence, but that would cost $15,000. I've just contacted a company about getting a gate for our second driveway. Also, where we live, you can't sue someone if they're trespassing on your private property. Suing people isn't something people can easily do here, and usually it's not for any big settlement. Before you comment about attractive nuisance law, it doesn't exist here. I don't want to say where I am, but it isn't the US or anywhere close. Not the jerk. If it's your property, it's your property. That woman was obnoxious, and it's her fault that her kid was crying. I would install a privacy fence and lock it. OP. I would love to install a fence, but it would cost upwards of $15,000. I think after this, we'll at least get a gate for the second driveway. It doesn't have to be a pretty fence. You could do the equivalent of a deer fence for a couple of hundred. A bunch of metal fencing poles you simply hammer into the ground, and a roll of wire garden or deer fencing you unroll and tie to the metal poles. Then you can put signs on the fencing. Private property, not a public park. Am I the jerk for throwing out my husband's dinner after he went to eat at his mom's house? My mother-in-law calls every night to ask what we're having for dinner. Then she brags about what she's cooking to make me look bad, especially if we're getting takeout. I used to care, but not anymore. But my husband would ask me to make dinner only for him to go eat the dinner his mom makes at her home, which is 10 minutes away, and using the "that's my favorite meal" excuse. Yesterday, I wanted to surprise him by cooking one of his favorite meals, and although I was busy, I took time off work to cook. I even went grocery shopping to get what I needed. Later, as I was setting the table, his mom called. I told him he didn't have to answer, but he did. Like usual, she asked what we were having, but acted surprised that I cooked this meal. She then went on to tell him that she cooked X meal and told him to come over. He said okay, which shocked me. I said, "Seriously?" as he started dressing up, getting ready to leave. He told me, no offense, but this meal that his mom cooked was even more of a favorite one than the one I cooked, and grabbed his keys and he left. I felt awful. I took his plate and threw it out, then ate my portion. As I was about to put the plate in the dishwasher, he got home looking angry, saying his mom lied about cooking that favorite meal and used it as an excuse to force him to eat dinner with her. I was shocked, but he sat down telling me to go ahead and reheat dinner. I told him no dinner after he abandoned it. I threw it out. He said, "What?" And I told him he disrespected my time and effort and chose to go eat with his mom instead. He began yelling at me, asking if I really did that, then called me petty and horrible, then went upstairs saying what I did was 100 times worse than what his mom did. I definitely feel like I let my anger and frustration get the best of me, but it really felt unbearable having to live like this for so long. By the way, I'm 26 and he's 28. ETA, to make one thing clear, and that's the fact that my husband only does this when it comes to food. He lived with his mom, attended community college, and loved and still loves her food and is used to it. She gave me recipes to make, and I try to do that, but he keeps switching homes just to eat what he feels like. Not the jerk. Why in the world is he telling you to go eat dinner? Did a T-Rex attack him and eat his arms on the way back from his mom's? Did he try to catch a piano falling from the sky, which broke his fingers? Did he anger a forest fairy and she cursed him and now he has 2 sets of legs instead of hands? Or is that him waving a huge red flag? These are all good theories, but have you considered that her husband may actually be a stray cat enchanted to appear human? That would explain why he wanders from house to house asking to be fed and then picks and chooses from what's offered. Not the jerk. Your husband can either commit to eating at home with you, tell you well before dinner that he's eating with his mom, or he can make his own meals. Until he starts regularly making a choice to be home or go with enough time for you to plan and prep your cooking, cook enough for only you. He's on his own. ETA. I wasn't going to say because I feel it's obvious, but I can't help myself. This is much larger of an issue than dinner time. There's a profound lack of respect in your relationship. Husband needs to snip the apron strings at the very least, but really needs to spend some serious time thinking about what a marriage and partnership actually means. Not the jerk, stop cooking for him. Tell him how you felt when you made the effort to prepare a nice meal and he decided to eat at mom's. If he continues to do it, you won't cool. I also suggest a compromise. Pick 2 nights a week that he eats with his mom. If she calls on other nights at the last minute, he can gracefully decline. Sorry, my wife has dinner taken care of. I'll see you on Thursday. If she particularly wants to have him there for a certain holiday or anniversary, she should ask well before that day arrives. You should consider asking her doctor to evaluate her for dementia because her behavior is weird. My aunt passed of Alzheimer's last week, but she did something similar. She would call and lie to get attention. I haven't seen anyone all day. There's no food in the house. None of this was true. She lived in a mobile home next to her daughter. Her 16-year-old grandkid stayed over every night in case she needed assistance at night. The family brought her food regularly. She had meals on wheels for lunch, and her daughter made breakfast every morning and sent dinner. She was surrounded by people who cared about her, but if she was left alone for 10 minutes, she whipped out her phone and started making these crisis calls. By the time we arrived, she forgot she had called. Your mother-in-law should be evaluated for a neurological or mental illness. Her behavior may not be able to be changed, but there are treatments available. Karen makes a fuss over my plane seat, then insists that I pay for her to move. So this happened back in January of 2018, so my memory may be a bit fuzzy. So I'm a 23-year-old man who usually visits my parents and siblings for Christmas and New Year's because that's the only time I can see them. So I'm in the airport waiting to board my flight as I see a woman getting angry because her kids were tired and wanted to get on the plane. I think nothing of it and hope she's not sat near me. No, she was at my gate. As I was approaching my seat, an aisle seat in business class because I knew it would be smarter than asking people to stand up so I can get to the bathroom. When I get to my seat, I see one mother and 2 kids, one in my seat. I tell the mother that's my seat. She's visibly upset at that statement and snaps back. No, it's not, jerk. Me, not wanting to have a fight on the plane, I grab the attention of the flight attendant and I show her my boarding pass, so the flight attendant asks her to move from my seat politely. And being asked to move set off the Karen in a raised voice. This is my seat. I paid for it, so buzz off. The flight attendant, still being polite, asked to see the boarding passes to check the seats. The entitled mother pulls 2 out for the seats next to mine. The flight attendant, slightly less kind, says, Ma'am, these are only 2 boarding passes. Where's the 3rd one? The mother, thinking she's smart, says, I must have dropped the 3rd one, so I can't give it to you. So this causes me to butt into the conversation and say that I have the boarding pass for that seat because it's my seat. You should have seen the look on her face, because she then shouts out, Give me my boarding pass, you jerk! I'm confused why she's so delusional at this point, because it's obviously my ticket since I bought it. The next part was back and forth arguing, which I can barely remember, but from what I do remember, it was the flight attendant saying that I clearly paid for this seat as it had my name on the boarding pass, and her arguing for a few more minutes before stopping grinning, and she said, Well, if you want me to move so bad, how about you pay to upgrade me and my kids to first class? I responded by saying, Miss, I only have a business class seat because I do a trip like this once a year, so I tend to be comfortable during a flight and I don't have the funds for 3 first-class tickets. The flight attendant then says to the Karen, Either you or one of your kids will have to move, or else we will have to remove you from the flight. Then, without holding back, she screeches, If I leave, he's going to hurt them. Me and the flight attendant are physically taken aback by hearing this. After that, I stopped trying to be nice and responded, Get out of my seat and never make those claims again, you self-centered jerk. The flight attendant tries to calm me down and calls for security. In the end, the Karen and her kids were escorted off the plane and I got a row to myself. I forgot about it until the other day, so I decided to post it here after getting into listening to these stories on YouTube. Anyways, thanks for reading my story. Am I the jerk for my reasons of no +1s at my wedding, causing several people not to attend? I'm getting married, and like every other bride, I too have certain rules I want for my wedding to go smoothly. One of them is the no +1s rule. Only people named in the invitation are invited. The criteria I have for people who will get to bring their partners are 1. Both me and my fiancé know of your partner and have met them. If I know your partner and my fiancé doesn't, that disqualifies them and vice versa. 2. If I'd personally go to dinner with you and your partner. 3. If I'd invite your partner as a separate person anyway and not just because they're your partner. 4. If your partner is also a friend of mine. Those who meet that criteria get to bring their partners. If they don't, then they don't get to bring them. Simple. That also excludes long-term relationships, engaged couples, and married couples as well. We know it might seem harsh, but those are the rules we've decided to set so we can be more comfortable. It has nothing to do with budget or venue capacity, purely our choice. Several people have denied the invitation to our wedding due to these rules. One of them is also my cousin. My cousin has been engaged to this girl for 1 year now, and he was upset we didn't include her. The reason she was excluded was because my fiancé hasn't met her, and she's not a person I'd personally be friends with either. I told my cousin how heartbroken I am that he will not come to the wedding due to this, and I expressed my distaste for the fact that he can't be away from his fiancé for a few hours to honor me and my fiancé. Couples don't have to be together the whole time. Then he basically told me I'm being extremely disrespectful and a huge jerk. I asked him to explain, and he said word for word, "Let me get this clear. You want me to come to honor you to your wedding, honor your love story and all that, but you can't respect me enough to invite my fiancé? I can be without my fiancé for several hours. Heck, we even spend days apart in vacations with our own separate friend group sometimes. What bothers me is not having to be away from my fiancé for a few hours, but the fact that you excluded her for those reasons." I told him those are my rules, take it or leave it. He says he finds my rules extremely disrespectful, but since it's my wedding, he has no say in it. I told him good, and to stop BSing me then, and show his support and respect by attending. He said that while he respects my extremely exclusive and disrespectful rules, I'm a fool to believe that he will care more about valuing my wedding over his fiancé. Am I the jerk? You're the jerk for guilt-tripping your cousin and anyone else you try to pull this crap with. Your wedding, your rules, but people are allowed to not attend for not liking your rules. Get over it. Only OP appears to be able to have rules. The cousin's rule is to not attend weddings where he can't bring his fiancé, which I find to be totally reasonable. OP doesn't believe others are allowed to be upset with her rules, but she is allowed to be upset with others' rules. Look, for the millionth time, weddings aren't just for the couple. They are community affairs. They're celebrations of marriage and coupling itself, not just this particular marriage. No one should come to a wedding who doesn't support that particular marriage, but also who doesn't support marriage and the kind of family building marriage represents in general. But there's a reverse logic as well. Attendance and invitations must also respect coupling and marriage and the family building created by unrelated people who come together to form a new family, and the family building created by unrelated people who come together to form a new family. If you forefront the particular couple's desire above the institution of coupledom or marriage itself, then why are you having a traditional wedding? You could go in front of a clerk at the city hall instead, or dance under the moon and have a couple's mud bath accompanied by a drum circle. OP wants the benefit of all the traditions without sharing that benefit around, and you can't get without giving. You're the jerk. I'm really confused by this mentality of, it's your wedding, do whatever you want, it doesn't matter. Like, obviously yes. If you have financial constraints and the like, don't go crazy. No one is expecting you to have insane food, venue, and music, etc. if you can't afford it. But excluding long-term couples, especially those already married, and those of your family members, is really weird. I wasn't invited to a wedding with my partner this spring, and it really hurt. It feels slightly invalidating, but I still sucked it up because it's someone else's wedding. Weddings are really community affairs. You're bringing together your community of people. If you're willing to invite one half because they're in your community, so in this case the cousin, then why are you excluding their other half, who is by extension part of your community? So in this case, the cousin's soon-to-be spouse. Especially with family. If I was cousin's fiancé, then post-marriage, this would probably really affect my relationship with OP. It would change how I'd view them. It's so weird to me why people go so far to exclude people. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her cousin? Please let us know. Cancel a land lease and hope to make a windfall? Hope you like a lot of dirt. Let me preface this by noting that this revenge was not my doing, at least not exactly. It happened back in the 90s when I was in high school and centered around the type of school I attended. So in case you weren't aware, it's very common in agricultural communities to have what are known as farmer schools. That's not a technical term, but more just something easy to define them. The schools are generally organized by the local farmers, and while you still study the various courses needed to get into college, you also study farming technology courses and get credit hours for work study, i.e. working on one or more farms. The area I lived in was surrounded by a number of large farms which grew cotton primarily. So during the year, we'd spend time out in the field, both tilling, planting, and harvesting. One of the farms near the school was this 1,000-acre spread that, like the others, grew mostly cotton, though sometimes they rotated to soybeans or silage, basically corn, but you don't harvest it. This farm had a long partnership with the school, So the students provided near free labor for the farmer. The farmer leased this property from some out-of-state owner and paid them a portion of the revenue from the harvest. Imagine my surprise then when I and many of my classmates arrived at the farm to do our work study, and the farmers instructed some to crew the sprayers and start spraying herbicide on the fields, while others, myself included, were to take tractors and discs and plow everything under. The farmer wanted every square inch of the fields returned to just dirt. We were shocked to say the least, but after some discussion, we set to work. It took us the better part of a weekend to do so, and when we were done, the field was in a beautiful, if barren, state. The farmer thanked each of us personally and paid us about $500 each, quite the sum for a 90s high school senior. We returned to the school, told our headmaster that the contract was completed, and he informed us that the farmer would no longer be working with the school, and we'd be sent to one of the other, larger farms for the rest of the year and our work study. It was probably 2 or 3 months later before words started going around about why we had been instructed to destroy the crop. Granted, these were just rumors, but based on how things turned out for the farmer, I suspect there's some truth to it. So apparently, the landowner had decided that he was going to not renew the lease the farmer had on the land. This lease renewal just so happened to fall a few weeks before harvest season would start. Given that the average cotton farm earns about $1,500 per acre, a 1,000-acre farm would easily net the owner $1.5 million, about $500,000 of that being pure profit. I don't know what the farmer's lease was, but it stands to reason that it wasn't anywhere near that. So this landowner had figured out a neat little trick. Let the farmer get a good crop planted and then refuse to renew the lease. The farmer would leave the plants in the field, and the landowner would just need to pay some contractors to come harvest it, and they'd earn a profit. Since at the time the farmer's lease wasn't yet up, he decided to prevent that from happening. His act of revenge against the owner was to prevent them from cashing in on their hard work. Sure, it destroyed his farm, and he had to sell off most everything he owned to buy some property for himself, but he had proved a point. The owner did try to sue the farmer, though he, the owner, really didn't have a leg to stand on, or so I was told. I think the court ruled that since the farmer was still under the lease when he had the land tilled under, then it was his property to do with as he wished, and thus the landowner couldn't tell him what to do with his property. I learned a rather valuable lesson from that man, beyond what I learned about farming. That lesson was, never ever cross someone with nothing to lose. Edit. Since it was brought up in the comments, let me add some details here. Cotton is one of the few crops which leave a negative nutrient value in the soil, meaning that after harvest, even if you till the dead plants under, or even if you till them prior to harvest, you won't have as much nutrients as you started with. That's why farmers will plant another crop, usually winter wheat, in place, and then till it under rather than harvesting it. This is something commonly called a green manure, but it works to put nutrients that the cotton pulled out of the soil back into it. While the ground wouldn't have been completely dead or sterile, any crop planted on that tract of land without further treatment of the soil wouldn't have produced the same acre per acre yield that a comparable crop would have had he gone to harvest and planted the secondary crop, which means that the landowner would either have to plant the green manure and spend money that way, or pay by the ton to use artificial fertilizer. Am I the jerk for not wanting to pay for my father's medical bills? I'm female, 29. My parents divorced when I was about 10 years old, and I have had no contact with my father after a year because he made the choice to prioritize his new family, stepson, who's 33, and eventually his kids with his new wife over my brother and I. No visitation after he got remarried at all. When we called to ask when he was going to visit us, he would just say that he was busy. Before the divorce, I was literally a daddy's girl, his beloved golden child, no joke. I thought my father was the best, and I wanted to marry a man like him when I grew up. So the fact that he just dropped my brother and me off has caused a deep-seated wound deep in my heart, which I will never ever forgive him for causing. He never paid child support, so my mother had to support my brother and I as a single parent. She decided not to take him to court as she never wanted anything to do with him again. Parents had 50-50 custody. However, 18 years is a long time, and thanks to my mother's love and care for us, I've already forgotten about him and moved on with my life. Same goes for my brother. We have both grown up to live comfortably in our lives, take care of our mother, and love her to no end. The story is that this morning, his stepson, who's 33, contacted me via Facebook and said he wanted to talk to me regarding our father, and I was confused at first and then remembered that yes, I had someone like that in my life. He told me that our father has a medical condition and treatment cost a lot, sent together with screenshot of his medical reports, and it would be nice if we could pay his bills, and also that my father wanted to speak to my brother and I. I told him that man lost his right to be my father when he decided not to have any contact with us, and also that his father's medical bills are none of my concern, so as his kids, you shouldn't go around harassing random people for money. Also, all those years of unpaid child support could be used to cover his medical expenses. After which he called me a vengeful and heartless jerk, to which I just replied with a smiling emoji and blocked him. I talked to my mom about this, and she said while I have the right to be angry with him, he is still my father and is unwell, so I could help them out a bit. I told her, no way am I going to pay for his bills. He has kids to pay for it, so let them settle it. He made his bed, now let him sleep in it. Was I the jerk here? Nope, not the jerk at all. Regardless, your father flat out discarded you, and as far as you know, has never made any attempt to see you or talk to you in 18 years. No way. On a separate note, your mother is a bit of a jerk for not pursuing child support. It's not for her, it's for you and your brother. And she wants you to contribute? Nope, she wanted nothing to do with him. Wouldn't even let any of his money go to supporting your upbringing, so you can do the same. Not the jerk. Also, the fact that the dad himself didn't have the courage to contact her first, and how tacky to contact someone out of the blue after more than 18 years and ask for money along with pictures of the bills. That man made his bed, and now he has to lie in it. Entitled Mom Ruins My Most Prized Possession. A small bit of information about me and some backstory. I'm 14 and have autism. I'm an amateur coin and Hot Wheels collector and enjoy collecting Hot Wheels and coins of small/moderate value. I've got exactly 41 coins that I've collected, ranging in price anywhere from $30 to $400. My crown jewel of this collection is my Flying Eagle penny, Flying Eagle cent, which I have in its own separate coin case as opposed to all of the rest which are in a picture frame. This coin is my prized possession. It's valued at around $1,000 to $1,500 US, so on the low-end price point because of its condition. The story starts around December of 2020. My auntie and her 3 kids came over to our rather stuffy trailer as they needed somewhere to stay while passing through our city. Now, I don't like anybody being in my room where my stuff is when I can't see them, but I'm more than happy to let them in when I'm in with them. My little cousin, 8, the same one who broke my original NES, to lightly put it, is a jerk. She's never ever had one day where she wasn't treated like royalty. Now, this behavior would be tolerated if she was 2 years old, but she's 8. So I don't put up with it. She knocks on my door asking to come in, and I agree. From now on, I'll call her Entitled Cousin. Entitled Cousin. Hey, OP, can I come in? Me. Yes, thanks for asking. She comes inside the room and sits on my bed, looking at my wall of Hot Wheels. Entitled Cousin. Those are so cool. Where did you get them? Me. Oh, I usually just buy them at the Hot Wheels store. They're pretty cheap. Can I please have one? Now, I'm a generous person and have some Hot Wheels I play with, so I had gave her one. It was a basic Toyota-looking one. But I wanted one of those. Points to the ones in the box on my wall. Me. Sorry, but I don't give those away. She cuts me off. But you aren't playing with them. They're still in the boxes. Me. Yes, but I like them in their boxes. I keep them in their boxes because I like them to be displayed. I want that one. She points to my Stars and Stripes 64 Pontiac GTO. Me. I'm sorry, but I won't give it away. Now please leave my room. I start nudging her out of my room before closing the door. It was relatively late, around 9:50 p.m. when they arrived, and they had inflated the blow-up mattress we had for them to sleep on, as they would be leaving the next day. So I decided to go to bed, as I had an online class tomorrow at 9 a.m. Cue the next day. I wake up around 7 minutes before my class starts and rush to my laptop, being around 2 minutes late for the class. They usually last an hour or two. 30 minutes of the teacher talking, and another 30 or an hour of work. Everyone in the house was awake at this time. The class period had ended, so I was working on the stuff for the last few days. My mom had told me she was going out with 2 of the 3 kids and that Entitled Aunt would be here because she didn't want to go, and neither did Entitled Cousin. I was fine with this. Another hour goes by, and then Entitled Cousin goes into my room. Me. Hey, Entitled Cousin. Entitled Cousin, looking at my coins. Wow, that's a lot of money. Now, I'm happy whenever anyone shows interest in my coin collection. Me. Oh, yeah, I collect coins just like my Hot Wheels. Just like the Hot Wheels, look with your eyes, please. Boss music. Entitled Aunt walks in. Oh, why can't she hold them? Me. They're in a picture frame. Entitled Aunt walks close enough to see all of the coins. Well, this one isn't, she said while picking up the flying eagle penny. It was in the case. I instantly go on edge. Me. Oh yeah, but I don't like people touching it. Entitled Cousin. Mommy, can I see it? She holds her arms out like a little toddler. Me, slightly panicked but trying to be nice. Yes, you can. Just please don't open it. Why can't we open the case? You obviously don't take good care of them anyway. Look how dirty they are. At this point, I'm full on, how do I stop this without escalating it mode. Me, you really shouldn't clean rare coins. It devalues the coin. Entitled Aunt starts to open the case. You're obviously lying, so we won't touch it. Coins are meant to look shiny. Plus, it's just a penny. How can you devalue a cent? During this whole ordeal, Entitled Aunt is practically screaming, hence the exclamation marks. I'm almost at my breaking point until I look in horror as she takes it out of its case. Entitled Cousin. Hey, give me. Entitled Aunt hands her the coin. All I remember is failing to hold in my tears as I don't like people touching my stuff. Entitled Cousin. Ew, it's dirty. Me. Okay, yes, now please give it back. She hands it to Entitled Aunt and Entitled Aunt flicks it at me. Clean your coins. I've never put a coin in its case faster. At this point, I thought the whole thing was over. I was sorely mistaken, as the penny isn't ruined yet, now is it? Skip a few hours when the whole thing is past us and I'm playing Rust with my friends. Apparently, Entitled Aunt had come into my room and taken the coin without me knowing. Probably when I was farming for a base in the game. I usually listen to music while farming, so I wouldn't have noticed. A few minutes later, I get up to get a bottle of water to see Entitled Aunt at the sink. At first, I had thought nothing of it because it looked like she was washing her hands. I headed back into my room after grabbing a bottled water because the tap water here sucks, and go back to my room. 20 minutes later, I go out into the living room where they're watching something on TV. I look at the counter with horror as my prized possession, the eagle penny I valued so much, is sitting in a vinegar bath in a glass. I fish it out of the vinegar and see that they had cleaned the coin and devalued it. What I did next, I regret, but I didn't know how to act. Me. I told you not to touch my stuff. Entitled Aunt. Don't give me that. I don't let her finish her sentence before screaming back. Me. You touched my crap. I told you not to. You ruined this coin. You don't clean them. Entitled Cousin starts to cry. Yes, you do. Coins are supposed to be shiny. And how did I devalue a penny? You can't spend them. We are Canadian and we don't have the penny anymore. I couldn't argue any longer. I was crying and couldn't speak. I went to my room with the coin. I felt defeated. Around 10 minutes later, my mom comes back from their 3 to 4 hours out. They had spoiled the cousins and gotten something for Entitled Cousin. They were Hot Wheels. Entitled Aunt brings the situation up first. Your son needs to learn to respect what I do for him. Mom. Oh, what did he do? He cursed at me and ran his mouth like a sailor, all because I had cleaned a dirty coin he had. My mom helped me get all of the coins I have today, especially the eagle penny. We looked for a long time to get a hold of one, and it was the only penny that I had which wasn't cleaned before I got it. She was livid. I don't really know what happened. What I do know is what Entitled Aunt had said. Isn't your son too old to have toys and collect small things like coins? Is he a spastic? My mom kicked them out and came to check on me, and I showed her the coin. It basically lost half of its value. It wasn't until a few hours later I looked at my Hot Wheels and saw one was missing, the '64 Pontiac GTO. Now I keep my coins at my grandfather's house in the back room. Once a month, me and him go look at them and add to my collection. Now I have 60 coins, but I'll never have one just as special as my Flying Eagle penny was. My daughter is demanding I fire her ex because she broke up with him. The boy in question is named Jaden, 22 male. Me, 45 female, and my husband, 46 male, have known Jaden for 15 years since he's the son of one of our friends. My daughter, Tati, 21 female, and him have had the same friend group for a few years now. In college, they befriended this girl named Paige, 21 female. My hubby and I loved Jaden with all of our hearts. Tati is our only kid, and we thought of him as our son. We believed they would get married one day, so I decided to teach him the family business since he was 17 years old, so that he could take care of it one day. Tati is not interested. I hired Paige for a while, but she ended up quitting because she had to take care of her mother because she broke her ankle. A year ago, Tati told us that she and Jaden were expecting, and while we were worried because they were too young, we were happy for them. Sadly, she lost it and ended up very depressed. I saw Jaden doing everything she wanted. As you can imagine, my daughter began to snap easily and started to treat the poor boy badly. We talked to her. We told her it wasn't fair, but she wouldn't listen. She said we didn't understand, nor did Jaden. During a fight, Tati broke up with Jaden. It was pretty common during those days, and he always came back saying sorry, but that time he didn't. He kept showing up to work. He kept talking to my husband and I, but it seemed that he was done with Tati. And as unfair as it sounds, I don't blame him. Eventually, he started to date Paige, and this obviously enraged my daughter. She demanded I no longer leave the business to Jaden because he wouldn't be family anymore. I stupidly said yes because my daughter was grieving and heartbroken. Jaden understood. I thought that was it. Tati never demanded anything else until 2 weeks ago when Jay told us that Paige was expecting. I guess it triggered Tati, so she demanded again that I fire Jaden because he has no business around us anymore. I don't know why, but I declined. It doesn't seem fair. Jaden has proven to me that he's cut out for this. He knows what he's doing. He's a good boss. He's smart and people trust him. So I said no. Tati went to her dad crying, and my husband demanded I fire Jaden ASAP, but I said no again. He said he would fire him himself then, and I said he wasn't allowed because the business belongs to my side of the family and my dad was still alive, so he had the last word. My husband keeps telling me that I'm the jerk for choosing Jaden over Tati, so maybe, am I the jerk? Not the jerk. Your daughter is trying to make this guy's life horrible. Why? Because she's upset that she was toxic towards him. She's upset because she broke up with him and he didn't come crawling back after dealing with her snapping at him. Sounds like she was mistreating him, by the way. I would be disgusted with my husband for wanting to enable her malicious and downright disturbing behavior. And of course, I would find my daughter's behavior deplorable if she acted this way. She's hurting people because they didn't enable her behavior. She's lashing out over what? Facing the consequences of her own actions? I'm sorry for her loss, but grief is not an excuse to treat other people poorly. Your daughter needs to grow up and, quite frankly, recognize that the world does not revolve around her. She seems to think otherwise. Not the jerk. There's no way you should fire an expectant father just because his ex is throwing a tantrum. Apart from being unethical, that could expose your business to severe legal and social liability. Well, what would you do in this situation? Would you fire him or not? Please let us know. I'd exile my daughter is what I'd do. Was it wrong of me to pay for a separate hotel room because I hated my husband's surprise? Me, 40 female, and my husband, Sam, 43 male, have 3 kids. After the birth of my youngest son, Sam and I almost never went on a romantic trip alone, as it was very difficult to reconcile for several reasons. When my youngest son turned 18 and moved because of college, I was very excited because we always agreed to go to France to stay in a wonderful hotel in a fancy room because it was my dream, and with 3 kids, I couldn't do it totally. My husband then asked to make a surprise. He would run after everything, booking restaurants, booking a hotel, plane tickets, but I told him which hotel I wanted to stay and the type of room, as it was always my dream trip with him. We have an excellent financial condition, so we could easily pay for it. We arrived at the hotel. He spoke to the receptionist and we went to the room. I was in shock when I found my kids and mothers waiting for us. My excitement went downhill from there, and honestly, I couldn't hide it because it wasn't what I imagined it to be, and it got worse when he said that because there were too many people to pay, he got cheaper rooms and that our sons would stay with us because it was cheaper. I tried to keep up appearances, but I gave my husband that look, and when I could, I went to the receptionist and asked for a better room for me. I paid with my service bonus, which is something my husband and I don't share, agreed between us. My husband was super annoyed, saying that this was a rude thing to do and that he wanted to have a family time, but couldn't afford something more expensive. In addition to having reacted badly to his surprise, it would be everyone's first time, and he wanted to give this moment for the first time at the same time to everyone. He didn't even want to go to my room. I loved visiting all the places, but having the presence of 5 more people, it was extremely discouraging. I love my kids, my mother, and my mother-in-law, but it was my dream to have a romantic trip for 2. It is worth saying, every year, except during lockdown, we travel to another country. We have never been to France. The trip was okay. My husband and I were obviously not doing very well. When we got home, he said my attitude of paying for a more expensive suite was childish and made everyone uncomfortable, and that my discouragement spoiled our trip. Am I the jerk? Extra. Yes, when I said I wanted to go to France, I said I wanted a romantic trip only for 2. Extra. As I understand the reason, he said he did it because it would be our first family trip after 2 years without traveling, and that we could do this trip now and do one in a few months, just the 2 of us. Not the jerk. Your husband knew exactly what trip you were expecting. He knew what hotel and room you were expecting. He decided to change it and was upset when you weren't okay with him unilaterally changing the plans. I'm sure his logic was, we do a family trip someplace every year, so this should be that trip. Why wouldn't it be? But if he wanted to be that logic, it needed not to be a surprise. It needed to be a discussion, because he knew that you guys had waited to do this trip until there were no kids left in the house. His attitude of thinking you had spoiled the trip when he was the one who had is a problem. You specified you wanted a romantic trip for 2 to France. He invited your kids and mothers along as a surprise. You're not the jerk, but in my opinion, paying for a more expensive hotel room is the least of your problems. I would be asking him, why did he invite others along and think you would like it when he knew you wanted and were expecting a romantic trip for 2? Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her husband? Please let us know. Am I the jerk for telling my girlfriend that she is spending her child support money irresponsibly? My girlfriend and her daughter's father broke up almost 2 years ago. Their daughter just turned 3, and she put in a petition for child support a little over a year ago because when they broke up, she had to buy mostly all new things for their kid. The father agreed to help, but ended up leaving my girlfriend to pay for everything alone. Support was finally settled, and he owes her $6,000 in back pay, and instead of paying it back in increments, he offered to pay it in full. My girlfriend was so excited, she said she was going to pay off credit cards that she fell back on because she struggled financially, as well as use the money to find an apartment and get clothes for herself because she hasn't gotten any new clothes since she had her daughter because she couldn't afford it, except for things I've bought her. Then said the rest will go in savings for her daughter. I told her that all the money needs to go in savings for her daughter or be used for things for their kid because that's her daughter's money, not hers. She gave me a pretty nasty glare and said, "No, this is my money. I'm being reimbursed for struggling alone since I put in the petition. I can spend the money however I please, and I'm not doing it recklessly, so why does it matter?" She was pretty upset and has been pretty short with me since. I think what she's doing is pretty crappy behavior, while she thinks I'm the jerk for overstepping and not considering how much financial hardship she's gone through. Now I'm wondering if I'm the jerk and if I'm being inconsiderate, or if I was right and she is being irresponsible. ETA. After reading all of your comments, I now see where I am the jerk. I made the mistake of looking at this back pay as new child support payments and not reimbursements for the hardship she's gone through. I will be giving my girlfriend a much-needed apology and won't budge into business that isn't mine. I need to realize that when she told me it wasn't a welcoming for my opinion, but she just wanted an ear to express her excitement and gratefulness to. Thank you, everyone. You're the jerk. Child support is meant to mitigate the costs of raising a kid alone. She's been making ends meet without that support, and now she's using the money exactly as it's meant to be used. He has not been paying, and now she is literally being reimbursed for carrying the cost alone. Goodness, she had to go into debt to support her baby, and you think she shouldn't use the money to pay off the debt? That's absurd. Paying off credit cards, finding a home for her and her daughter, and basic necessities like clothing that she sacrificed while spending all her money on her kid when she had no support are completely appropriate uses for child support money, not to mention important ones. Do you think she should just stay in debt and not find a home for her and her kid? Neither of those options are good for the kid in the long run. You sound incredibly out of touch. So, she's recklessly spending child support money on things like getting stable housing for the kid and paying off debt she incurred while supporting the kid on her own? You're the jerk. Her finances aren't your business. Am I the jerk for having the same standards for my daughter as my sons? I, 48 female, have 5 kids. The twins are 16, male, and my triplets are 15, male, male, and female. Currently, the 16-year-old male twins share a room. The 15-year-old male twins have a room, and the single girl has a room. All kids could have their own rooms, but they chose to share. This year, my boys all came together. They asked if they could all pool their birthday money for a room makeover. They wanted their beds and clothing to be in one room and desks in the other room for a gamer's paradise, and have been saving last year's birthday presents and have been saving their Christmas money for the last 2 years. I painted their gaming room a dark gray with leftover paint from my parents' renovation, but added LEDs as the main light source on the ceiling and under the desks and in each shelf, made the closet into a built-in bookshelf for video games and their figurines, along with wall shelves, added a couple of mini fridges for drinks, a mini snack vending machine, and painted their desks to match. Then changed their sleeping and clothing arrangements. I did not spend any additional money outside of the budget, and boys all helped with manual labor of moving stuff and painting furniture that my daughter did witness. Now my daughter is jealous I didn't do her room as well. We explained that the boys have been saving money and birthday and Christmas presents, and she asked to make a total room makeover plan too. So we did, and it would cost about the same as what the boys did. She wanted all new furniture along with painting it and crafting setup. I told her if she wanted exactly this room, she would need to contribute this much amount of dollars, and even came up with a plan if she wanted to do extra chores. All kids get this opportunity. But if she didn't want new furniture, we could repurpose the old stuff we have between storage and what's currently in there, and she could afford it this year. Edit. Since people are assuming it's huge amounts of money, overall her room would cost $1,200 with new furniture. Without new furniture and repurposing some of our old stuff, I'm only asking her to contribute $200, which is one birthday and one Christmas money. The boys bought things for the room with money from the past few years, like the lights one year, and I didn't buy the decor. It was all repurposed or built from other things. My husband thinks I'm not being fair to her because there were 4 boys to save money and there's only one of her. I said we shouldn't be picking favorites and all kids should be at the same standard. And yes, there's one of her, but I didn't buy the boys any new furniture and she wants all new stuff, not renovated. Well, we were doing early Easter at my parents' and my daughter asked Grandpa for money because I wasn't being fair and favoring the boys. I stopped that immediately and told my dad the entire story. Now my family is split on the verdict. My mom says I'm the jerk for the same reason of my husband, but my dad says I'm teaching her a valuable lesson on budgeting and repurposing. So my husband and I, who regularly frequent here, are wondering, am I the jerk for keeping my daughter at the same standard as my sons? Edit to the edit. My boys have offered to help her repurpose old stuff and even help her purchase the renovation materials, but she wants the new furniture. All the kids have the same hobbies except video games. She'll join her brothers on multiplayer when they need a fifth, but otherwise says it's a waste of time. When I asked why she needs new things instead of repurposing, her exact quote was, "It won't look like the TikTok if I repurpose stuff. I need new stuff." You're the jerk. I think your husband makes a good point. 4 people can save up quicker than 1 and can make 4 times income of 1 person. It's great that the boys chose to share, but realistically, this isn't a choice for your daughter. With this in mind, I don't agree that she is being treated fairly. I think asking her to save 1/4, as each of the boys did, would be reasonable. Your title is misleading. It's not really the same standard for exactly the reason your husband pointed out. There's 1 of her and 4 of them. She can't choose to share the way they did because she doesn't have sisters. You're the jerk. Valet closes when the restaurant closes, Karen. Happened a few weeks ago, but I'm still salty. A large group comes in at 6:30 to celebrate a birthday. It's 15 people. They have a good time and they leave at 9:30. We are a higher-end restaurant in a large city and offer complimentary valet service, which is practically impossible for our neighboring restaurants to provide. We've been operating in this location for years and have been grandfathered in. About half of the party decides they're not done for the evening and walk to one of the local bars still serving alcohol. We close at 11 p.m. Valet comes in to check with me at 11:45. The restaurant is empty and he has 4 sets of keys that no one has claimed and he's leaving for the night. I take the keys, place them in the safe, leave, go home and relax. The next morning at work, there's a ton of voicemails, all from the guests that showed up at 1:30 a.m. to pick up their keys to find valet closed. Each message is increasingly ruder. I call them to reassure them that we have their keys in the safe, and they all lose it on me. 2 people arrive, reeking of booze, complaining that they couldn't drive home and had to take an Uber, and then demanded money as compensation. I was firm. I'm sorry that you were inconvenienced by the situation, but the valet service is for our restaurant only, and there's no way for them to contact you if you leave and go to a second location. Another group shows up and does the same. Now they're all standing outside the restaurant like a bunch of money-hungry jackals. To be honest, they were lucky they didn't get booted. 3 more people show up. It was like a video game, and this was the final boss. All 7 accost me with one angry woman as their ringleader. She demands $800 in gift cards, which absolutely will not happen. She then tells me she has recorded evidence of other managers resolving this issue with gift cards. First, no, and second, extortion. She then threatens my job, telling me she knew the owner. I ask her, who's the owner? Instead of answering, she just demanded to know if I was going to take responsibility for their inconvenience by reimbursing them with gift cards. No. Then she told me she worked for the city and was going to press charges. Okay, do that. She then DM'd my chef and owner on Instagram demanding a full refund for everyone's dinner, plus hotel accommodations and Ubers. The jerk told me to my face that she had to break into her own apartment and then demanded $300 for a hotel stay that never happened. She wanted $5,000 compensation for being too stupid to realize that valet is not a 24-hour service. The audacity astounds me. Edit to add. You know when you see a sign posted that spells out the obvious in very clear terms and realize some dum-dum is the reason for said sign? Come visit my restaurant. Valet has a very clear and direct sign alerting people that the valet is a complimentary service provided by the restaurant and closes when the restaurant closes. Dummies. Am I the jerk for telling my husband that I'm not going to eat the same food he does anymore? My husband has been diagnosed with Crohn's disease 2 months ago, which means he has a very restricted diet, at least in the beginning. That's mostly chicken, fish, red meat, plain rice, pork, soup, eggs, no fried stuff, almost no vegetables, no fast food, no milk, no drinks, no seasoning or spice, no juice, no snacks whatsoever. Only bananas for fruits, and that's about it. It's been a very hard diet for him, and to be supportive, I started eating with him this stuff and only these in front of him and inside the house until he gets much better. It's exhausting eating the same food every day, but we've been experimenting. Sometimes roasted chicken, boiled chicken, roasted fish, carrot soup, etc. And here's the problem. Although he was getting much better, I was getting much worse because I can't handle it anymore. No French fries, no hamburgers, no takeouts, no salad, no lettuce, no tomatoes, etc. And I just can't. It's too suffocating for me. It's almost the same food every day. Every time I sit at the dinner table with him, I force myself to go through it. He asks me if everything's okay, and I tell him there's nothing wrong. I then started slowly giving up and preparing some side meals only for me. He gets really upset and jealous and can't resist when he sees me eating them, so he tries to get his hand on them multiple times, and I push him away and stop him, reminding him that it's for me, not for him, and he has to follow his diet for a few more months. 2 days ago, I completely gave up and entirely ate nothing of his food, only stuff like fries with sauce, etc. There were leftovers in the fridge, and I caught him eating them. He ate like 2 dishes. I yelled at him, and he said it's fine, nothing was going to happen. 5 hours later, he got explosively sick and constantly was throwing up and in pain. He went to the hospital the next day. The doctor gave him new additional medicine, immunosuppressants. When we were back home, he was very mad at me and said that it was partially my fault for not being supportive enough and for doing what I did in front of him knowing his condition. I told him that I'm not the one with Crohn's disease. He's an adult and he should control himself. I also told him that I don't care if he gets hospitalized anymore. It will be his fault. He's very upset now and is claiming that he would have done the same for me if it was the other way around. I don't believe him. Am I the jerk? Edit. I also want to say that we both cook in the house. The problem isn't who cooks. The problem is, what do we cook? And what food can we have and keep inside the house? Note, I know that we're both upset with each other right now, and I accept your judgments, but please, for goodness sake, stop calling my husband names in the comments. It just hurts. You have got to remember that he is on this restrictive diet for like 6 months at least. It's hard to only eat boiled chicken and stuff like this for 6 months. I almost went insane just after a month from it, and I was taking fast food breaks outside and behind his back sometimes. It's very restrictive and depressing. I'm not excusing anyone, but now that I calmed down a bit, please stop insulting my husband. Final edit. This comment section had extremely diverse opinions, ranging from everyone sucks here to nobody sucks. From what I understand, he should resist the temptation more than this, and I'm still mad that he did what he did. But I'm not excusing myself from the situation. It was my fault for putting dishes, one of them was his favorite, in front of him like that. It was my fault for poor communication when I kept pushing his hands off the plates instead of actually talking to him. It was wrong to say that cruel line about me not caring if he goes to the hospital. It's not easy being sick with Crohn's disease, and being on a restrictive diet like this after you used to eat all that you want, I'm going to apologize. We're both jerks in different ways. The truth is that this diagnosis was hard on both of us, especially him. He has to adjust to this new whole lifestyle for a while, and he doesn't even do his favorite things anymore, like working out as an example, due to a bland diet and exhaustion. But this is not going to divorce us. We're going to work it out no matter what. We still love each other. Our relationship has been perfect otherwise, and we are going to continue supporting each other even in the face of these challenges. To the people who sent me encouraging messages about joining groups for Crohn's and your different experience with dealing with IBDs and IBS, thank you so much. We're going to see into that. I wish you luck in your journey with these diseases. To the people who lack sympathy and keep insulting my husband even after I told them to stop, forget you. Just because I was angry for a moment and now I'm calm doesn't mean I'm going to let you insult him. Yes, he's an adult, 27. He should control himself, but just try eliminating 95% of food with no choice for almost a year. It will take a toll on you. You have provided him with the food he can eat. You were supportive at the start, which was very helpful, I'm sure. But you don't have Crohn's, he does. My husband is diabetic, and I have modified our diets accordingly. However, I still eat other food too. My husband actually doesn't want to limit what I can eat because he loves me. It is unreasonable for your husband to demand that you two stay on such a severe diet when it is unnecessary. Also, he's an adult and ate 2 plates of the food he knew was bad for him. Not your fault. He did it to himself, not the jerk. Am I the jerk for keeping my home too warm and not wanting to adjust it for my boyfriend? I, 31 female, have severe chronic anemia, a result of which is I struggle to keep myself warm and am always cold, even with my iron pills and transfusions when my levels drop too low. It sucks, but it has become a part of my life that I'm used to. I keep my flat at 28 degrees Celsius, 82 degrees Fahrenheit, and never have it lower than that, as lower is uncomfortable for me. And even at 28, I need to have a hoodie and socks on for additional warmth. It means my gas bill is higher than the average person, but what can you do? My boyfriend, 30 male, attempted to stay overnight for the first time during the weekend and was horrified by the temperature, complaining of being too hot constantly and wanting me to turn it down. I apologized, but said I really couldn't, explaining how it felt painful if I got too cold. For anyone who doesn't suffer as badly as me with anemia, imagine the pins and needles you get when playing in the snow for hours. That's me when my temperature drops too low. I finally caved and lowered it to 25 degrees Celsius, throwing on an extra layer, and offered him ice water and to give him a desktop fan to try and keep him cool while also staying warm myself, but he was clearly uncomfortable and ended up going home at around 1 a.m. as he couldn't take it anymore. I was upset by this, but didn't try to stop him, as if he was that uncomfortable, there was no point in him suffering. On Monday, he texted me, telling me I seriously needed to go see the doctor if I was that cold all the time. And I tried to explain I've been to the doctors about this, and there isn't much we can do, as we don't know what causes my anemia no matter what tests we run. He has told me that he can't stay overnight if it's going to be that warm, and compared my home to a lizard's terrarium, which I admit hurt a little, though I know he was likely meaning it as a joke. Maybe I should have just sucked it up and been cold. I'm cold when outside or in the office or in other people's homes, so why not? I just like my home being a place I can warm up a little though. Maybe I was a rude host. I should have put his needs first. Not the jerk, but you two are not temperature compatible. I mean, he is a little for being upset when it's a medical condition, but I empathize. I couldn't sleep with a room that hot. I'd be devastated if that was the reason I had to end it with my current partner, but it just isn't feasible, and it's ridiculous to have the person with a medical condition compromise. It being a medical condition doesn't mean he can't be upset about it. He's entitled to his feelings. That said, he shouldn't have pressured her to turn it down. That's ridiculous. He should have just gone home. I couldn't sleep in it either. I'm leaning towards no jerks here. 28 degrees Celsius is very hot, especially for an indoors temperature, so I understand why your boyfriend wouldn't be able to sleep like that. I know I wouldn't. However, you have medical conditions that make it necessary, so neither of you are in the wrong. His comments might have been a bit unnecessary, but they did, like you said, seem like a joke. He told me we didn't have to see each other, so I didn't. A few years ago, I started seeing this guy casually. We both explicitly agreed when we started that we weren't looking for a relationship. That went on great for a bit, but a few months in, things started to get ambiguous. He started acting really inconsistently, sometimes acting and talking like we were in a relationship, and sometimes ignoring me or getting really flaky. Now, personally, I wasn't actively looking for a relationship because I had a lot of things to focus on at the time, but I wasn't opposed to it either. It was good either way, so long as I knew what was going on between us. In hindsight, the ambiguity was itself a red flag that I should have taken at face value regardless of relationship status. But hey, we learn best through experience, and I didn't realize it at the time. So after a few weeks of him seesawing back and forth particularly hard, I had had enough and decided to talk to him about it. Honestly, I was fine either being casual or in a relationship. I just couldn't tolerate being in between, and I wanted to set up boundaries. When I tried to ask him about what he wanted to do though, he blew up. Basically tried to convince me it was all in my head, that I had made up his behavior. When I pushed him for clarity on what he saw us as, he responded that we're just two people who see each other when they feel like it, nothing more. Clearly not what he had been communicating before, but I did ask for clarification, so I get what I get. If he had said it without the gaslighting, I probably would have been okay with it, but at that point I was ticked off. So I said okay, talked with him for a few minutes, led him to the door, smiled goodbye, then closed the door and never saw him again. He probably thinks I ghosted him, but I know all I did was accept his terms. We were just two people who saw each other when they felt like it. It just so happened that after he blew up at me about the whole thing, I didn't really feel like seeing him. He did end up messaging and calling me a few times since then, asking to hang out. I answer, but I'll never see him. I don't feel like it. Pizza shop owner told me not to show up after 10:15, so I didn't. This story took place a few years ago, but I just remembered it after passing by the shopping center the pizza place used to be in. Background information. At the time, I was working for a window cleaning company and was paid commission. I got paid a fraction of whatever I cleaned. At the beginning of the day, we would be given a list of jobs in an area and drive around until everything was done. Usually the routes were somewhat random, meaning it was rare to get the same route twice in a row. Most routes had a large number of restaurants that had to be done before they opened, so usually we would have to plan out when to get to a job based on what time they arrived, so we wouldn't have to backtrack. The route in question will be called Springfield, but this route also had two small pizza places in the next town over, Shelbyville, that were always included because the company did not have any other jobs in that area, and Springfield was the closest town. Both of these jobs didn't usually show up until around 10:15 to 10:30, so I would often have to save them until all my other restaurants were done before making the 15-minute drive over. There also wasn't enough work on this route to justify sending two people, so whoever had it was by themselves. To the actual story. So one morning I'm driving out to Shelbyville and stop at the first job at around 10:20. This job is cheap, consisting of about one big window and a door. However, the lights were completely off and no one replied when I knocked, so I left to do the other job in the area before returning at around 10:40 to see someone inside. At that point, I get my stuff out and start cleaning the outside, only for the owner to see me and come storming to the door. In a very angry voice, he asks me what I thought I was doing. When I explained that I was cleaning the windows, as if it wasn't already apparent, he yells at me that I should have been there earlier, to which I told him what time I was originally there, that the lights were out and no one answered when I knocked. The owner assured me he was there, but that he just likes to sit in the back office with all the lights out, and next time I should knock harder. Lastly, before I left, after he refused to pay for the outside I had already done, he yelled that, "If you can't be here before 10:30, Don't even bother coming at all. The malicious compliance. It was around this time that back in Springfield, my boss had picked up another restaurant that was about 10 times more expensive, but had the same issue of people not showing up until around 9:45 to 10 to allow me to clean the inside. This meant that every time I had this route, I had to pick between a job that cost $10 or a job that cost $100. I picked the more expensive one. Because this new place was so much bigger, even if I did the outside before they got there, it would still take me at least 20 to 30 minutes to finish the inside. Because of this, I wouldn't even start driving out to Shelbyville until almost 10:30. As a result, I took what the owner said to heart and stopped showing up. Also, because of some weird twist of fate, I ended up getting this route multiple times in a row, so this guy hadn't been clean for 6 months straight before someone else eventually had to do it. It became even funnier for me as during those 6 months, we picked up a dry cleaner right next door to him that I would clean while staying just out of sight of the pizza place. It also somehow slipped past my bosses that I hadn't been doing this one job as it never came up. When my coworker went to go clean it, the owner apparently thought we had gone out of business or something as he hadn't seen us in so long. Shortly after, he canceled service altogether, then went out of business maybe another 2 months after that. My boyfriend wants his name on the mortgage even though he's not contributing towards the down payment. Little background. I just moved back home from a large city to a smaller city, closer to family for a better job. My boyfriend is currently in the larger city where we rent a townhome while he's trying to find a job so he can follow me. I'm currently looking to purchase a home in this terrible buyer's market. My dad is insistent on buying so I don't keep wasting money on renting, but the market is really bad here. I found a house that I'm obsessed with, outside of my budget, but my dad is offering to help me with the down payment significantly, allowing me to just repay him over time. My boyfriend won't be putting any money down on a payment. My boyfriend said that if his name isn't on the mortgage, then he refuses to pay me rent when he moves in with me. He also thinks that I shouldn't buy a house right now since the market is so terrible, and he doesn't know if we'll like the area yet, since I only grew up here and haven't lived here since I was a kid. I feel like he's being really controlling over the issue, but I'm trying to see it from his side as well. He's getting his grandmother's ring reset to propose, and he's really making the effort to move down here. I know he feels left out in the process, but I guess I just don't understand why he can't wait to be put on the mortgage until we're married. Edit. Thank you for all the responses, and honestly, thank you for the law, mortgage, deed help, and clarification. This is my first home, and it's a lot to take in and a lot to learn. Also, not going to commit fraud. Repay over time. He quite literally said, maybe pay him back after the house was fully paid off, and if I sold it while he was still alive. It's truly a generous gift. I think I said repay over time because it's a generous gift, and I feel unworthy to accept, but that's a personal issue, and we could be here all day. Everyone sucks here. Here's what your boyfriend's post might look like. I'm in a serious relationship with my girlfriend and I'm about to propose. She wants to move to a smaller city that she grew up in. I'm not excited about the idea because we've never lived there and I'm afraid it won't be a good fit for us. But I'm willing to move there because it's important to her. I'd like to rent there for a bit before buying to see if we like living there and which neighborhoods we like. But because her dad is insisting she buy a place, she's gone ahead and found a house she wants to buy there, and her dad is paying the down payment. She wants me to move there with her and pay half of the mortgage for a house I'll get no equity in, that I didn't help choose, in a city where I don't even have a job yet. I don't understand why she's making these decisions with her dad and not with her life partner. She's accusing me of being controlling when she's the one who's making all the decisions without my input. I feel like I've already sacrificed a lot by being willing to move to her hometown with her, and now I'm being steamrolled. Am I the jerk if I tell her I won't pay the mortgage with her unless my name is on the deed? Exactly. Plus, I'm worried I won't have any rights living in her home, and she could just kick me out one day. Also, owning a home is a lot more work. I've enjoyed being a renter and not having to do yard work, worry about repairs and such. She's really excited about a home we really can't afford, but won't talk to me about the details of how our living together and me renting from her will work. I'm beginning to wonder if this is the right move for me. Would I be the jerk if I told her I'd prefer to do long distance for a while or rent separately when I first move? Exactly. I feel so sorry for this dude now with everyone saying he's an ungrateful, controlling freak who wants to steal her money, that he should just pay the rent or be dumped. He just wanted to make his life with his girlfriend, find a new place, propose to her. I'm sure if the situation would have been reversed, him buying the house, everyone would have called him the jerk. Everyone sucks here. You for buying a house like you're single. He's going to live there. You obviously plan on marrying him. Does he not get a say in where he lives? What if he hates the house? He's not even sure he wants to live in that city permanently. But who cares what he wants? Let's listen to Daddy and take his money for a house that you can't even afford. And Daddy is the jerk too, for basically forcing your hand to buy in that city instead of giving it time and seeing if that is where you really want to live, or see if you and your boyfriend would be happy there. As for the boyfriend, he is giving ultimatums and not contributing financially to the down payment. I see why you don't want to put his name on the house, but again, if you plan on marrying him and paying the mortgage together, why not wait and buy a house together? Well, who do you think is the jerk, OP or her boyfriend? Please let us know. If you are going to get married, I'd probably wait on buying a house for now. My brother's girlfriend sent me a list of chores I need to do before my Easter celebration. I'm male, 31. My brother, Tom, who's 28, has a girlfriend named Harper, who's 25. They've dated for 4 years. They aren't married, they never want to, but Harper calls herself a sister-in-law. They have no kids and Harper doesn't work. This would be fine if they didn't struggle financially. They had to move in with my parents because of debt. My family thinks Harper is lazy and she compensates by being a perfect housewife. Harper puts all of her free time into party planning, as in planning our family's birthdays and holidays, which we never asked for and don't like. She treats every event like it's a wedding and she the wedding planner. For context, she makes spreadsheets of all the things to do weeks in advance. These people are in charge of the food. This many people, this budget, these options, up for debate later. These people do decorations, cleaning up before and after, color scheme and attire suggestions. These people do entertainment, karaoke, games, music, playlists, movies, slideshows. My family collectively rolls our eyes and says things like, Harper, it's a birthday for a 1-year-old. My 1-year-old. There will be 10 people there, so buzz off with this list. Harper pouts and is moody at the events because if only we did it this way, it would have been so much more special and memorable. I'm hosting Easter at my house because I have a large yard for the kids to hunt eggs. As usual, Harper sent the family spreadsheets for the event. Apparently, my job as host is to properly clean my house, weed and mulch my flower beds, and remove a dead tree on the edge of the property. There was a tips and tricks for lawn care she added at the bottom. Harper has decided to cook the food. Her budget is $120, $155 if I want a cake. I emailed her back and simply said, "Who invited you?" She sent me a bunch of question marks. I texted back, "Unfortunately, there will be no +1s to watch my kids find eggs in the yard. If I let my brother bring a date, then I'd have to let my other guests bring dates, and we have already hit our budget of buying a grocery store ham. Sorry, I'm sure you understand how things are. Best wishes." She stopped talking to me. My brother is mad at me. My dad thinks I'm petty. My sisters couldn't care less, and my mom is happy though. She hates Harper. My wife wants me to act my age and stop this drama, but because it's my family, she's leaving it as my decision. Am I the jerk for banning Harper? Edit. Harper started making the spreadsheets when she and my brother moved in with my parents. We told her thanks but no. Every get-together, she wanted to add a few $100s to it of our money. We firmly said no, and she continues to give us passive-aggressive comments about not making our family moments special. I don't consider her family. No one does, not even my brother. He doesn't want to marry her because this is just another girlfriend to him. Their relationship is toxic. I didn't mention it because that's not the problem right now. I'm rude to her, I admit it. Last edit. Wow, a lot of comments. Thanks for the responses. I'm glad to know many feel my response was justified, but will also consider the advice from those that feel I should be the better person. To answer the many asking about my brother, their relationship, and my parents' place in it, my brother is a jerk. I know it, my family knows it. He has strung Harper along for years, and we assumed they would break up long before now. Harper treats him like a king, does everything for him, so that's why he's still with her, but has told us she's just another girlfriend. My dad spoils my brother and pressured my mom to take her in along with my brother. My mom hates Harper. My other two siblings, sisters, are low contact, and I am low contact as well. When Harper moved in with my parents, she really pushed for a family connection, correcting us to call her a sister-in-law, not a girlfriend, being a part of all family events, controlling them really. We've shut her down every time, but she pretends like it's never an issue. so we ignore her now. Entitled mom tries to set her daughter up with my uncle, whilst my cousin is on the ground, in pain. Cast. We've got me, irrelevant, my name's Benjamin if it helps. We've got Sarah, my cousin. We've got Uncle Sam, my uncle. We've got the embarrassed girl, you'll see why. And we've got entitled mother, who should probably take a parenting class. It was the summer break. Like I said, I was 13 at the time, and parents were off in Canada visiting some relatives of my mother, leaving me with aunt and uncle for the week. Yay. We were at the park. I was watching Sarah, who was 10 at the time, while she played with the other kids to make sure she didn't get into any trouble or whatever. My uncle was watching from a nearby bench. All of a sudden, this girl, who looked to be about 18, walked up to my uncle. This part is paraphrased dialogue, of course, since I was too busy watching Sarah at the time. Embarrassed girl. Hey there, good looking. Uncle Sam. Oh, hello. Can I help you? Embarrassed girl. Prepare to cringe. Just wondering, what's a hunk like you doing in a dump like this? Wait, if it's a dump, why was she there? Strange, no? Uncle Sam. Well, Embarrassed girl. Oh, never mind. Would you like to go get a coffee with me or something? Uncle Sam. Sorry, but how old are you exactly? Unfortunately, the girl perceived that question as him being interested in her, which was the furthest thing from the truth. Oh, you do want to go out with me, don't you? Not a surprise, considering how hot I am. Please, someone send the cringe police. I'm dying just writing this. Uncle Sam. No, I'm married. I'm just asking because you don't look older than 18. The embarrassed girl, from what my uncle told me, looked embarrassed and red in the face when my uncle mentioned that he was married. She then mumbled that she was, in fact, 18 years old. I think it's worth noting that my uncle is the same age as my aunt, which at this point in time would have been 35. Uncle Sam informed her as much, and the girl looked even more embarrassed. She mumbled some awkward apology and walked away. 5 minutes later, entitled mom appears, with embarrassed girl apparently telling her to stop in the background. Entitled mom. Excuse me? Uncle Sam. Yes, can I help you? He's a polite dude. Are you the man my daughter talked to earlier? Uncle Sam, awkward laugh. Yeah, I am. So, what's wrong with her? I'm sorry? You heard me. Why won't you go out with her? Uncle Sam. Oh, well, I'm married. Not to mention, she's kind of younger than me. Entitled mom lets out that classic Karen scoff. Oh, come on. You're only 20. You're not that much older than her. I'm 35, actually. Oh, shut it, kid. You can't be older than 23. You just want an excuse not to date my daughter. Now, I will say that my uncle does look slightly younger than he is, but if you looked at his face at the time, the youngest you could think he was 30. How this woman thought my uncle was 15 years younger than he actually was is beyond my understanding. Uncle Sam. Lady, I don't really care what you think. I'm 35, and whether you believe me or not, that's an undeniable fact. And even if I was 20, I don't have any obligation to date your daughter. Don't be selfish. She's recently had a breakup, and it's been really hard on her. You don't want to break the heart of a girl who's going through a tough time. I'm sorry to hear that, but again, I'm 35 and married. So what? Age is just a number. What matters is that you love the one you're with. Embarrassed girl. Mom, stop. Uncle Sam. Lady, you shouldn't be encouraging this kind of stuff to happen. Are you insulting my parenting? No. At that point, I came running towards Uncle Sam because whilst he was having that conversation with entitled mom, my cousin ended up twisting her ankle while playing, which caused her to scream in pain. I'm a fool. I have failed my duty. So I immediately panicked and ran off to get my Uncle Sam. I told him what happened, and he went with me to Sarah, who was on the floor with the other adults trying to help and calm her down, crying in pain. My uncle went into Papa Bear mode and motioned to help my cousin, but entitled mom had other plans in mind and followed him. She said this. Hey, don't ignore me. I was talking to you. What's wrong with my daughter? Why is she not... Now, my Uncle Sam is not normally a confrontational person, but the fact that this lady was still trying to set him up with her daughter, despite my cousin was on the floor in obvious pain, really set him off. He interrupted her, shouting, Lady, shut up. The entitled mom stopped the minute my uncle shouted, Uncle Sam, you can clearly see my daughter is on the floor in pain, yet the only thing you can think about is getting a date for yours. Buzz off now and let me help my kid. The entitled mom was shocked by Uncle shouting, and looked like she was about to say something else. But after seeing that people were shooting her some dirty looks, she just took her embarrassed daughter and left. After that, we took my cousin home and treated her twisted ankle the best we could. My uncle hadn't seen the lady ever since then, but honestly, I'm kind of wondering what was going through her brain. Like, why was she looking for dates for her daughter in the park? Did she honestly think that their age difference was fine? On the subject of age, did she actually believe my uncle was 15 years younger than he actually was? Or was she just looking for an excuse for him to date her, considering she switched gears and tried to pull the "age is just a number" card? This lady was so weird, I wouldn't be surprised if she was responsible for the pickup lines that her daughter tried to use. I also wouldn't be surprised if the whole breakup story was just to guilt trip my uncle. But, I don't know anything about their lives, so it could be true. Well, I hope you liked this one, I guess. If you want to make it a whole thing, go ahead and call the cops. My usually not irresponsible teenager lost his phone and just realized it while competing in a district track meet he was invited to. This fueled my urgency to find his phone more than its value or anything else. I had my daughter use her Find My Phone app to see it at a local convenience store. I refreshed the search to see that it was hovering around the space of the store in the parking lot, almost back and forth between two locations. I tell my daughter I'm taking her phone with me to the store to retrieve it in between my son's events, 100-meter discus and shot put. I arrive through the doors, a la Kramer from Seinfeld, phone up and in hand like I'm on a timed scavenger hunt. The clerk gets suddenly shifty, looking at me, then looking away and looking at his customer. Understandable with how I entered. I jumped in line, patiently waiting for the customer in front of me to interview the clerk about the state lottery system, a barrage of ridiculous questions that even I couldn't write up. Finally, it's my turn, and now I'm the only customer in here. I also noticed that upon refreshing the app I was using, it hasn't moved since I entered the store. I begin with what would be a line of my own questions. Hey, my son lost his iPhone, and this app says it's near here. Has anyone turned in a phone? Lying clerk says, nope. I retort, could you look around and see, because I've refreshed this over the past 20 minutes, and it's here. Liar McLiarstein continues his poorly spun web of lies. I don't know anything about it, man, so quit bothering me. You lost your phone, get over it. Dude, it's here. Where's my phone? If you want to make it a whole thing, go ahead and call the cops. See what they do. Oh, let's do that. Now I know that I can ping the phone to make noise, but I don't know if he's got it in his car, in the back room locked up, or somewhere I can't get to without being arrested, like behind his counter. I call the cops and explain the situation as well as my suspicions. The police ask what app I used, if it's active, if I have any more evidence that it's in his possession. I explained that I didn't want to ping it yet until they could help. They agreed to send a car out. I wait outside at the next door, Dutch Bros, out of his line of sight, hoping he was convinced I left. The police arrive and I flag them to me, showing him the app. They also took my ID, which was weird, but whatever. We end up entering the store together as I ping the phone. Beep, beep. It's back in his office. He answers questions as he gets handcuffed. I get the phone back to the track meet just in time to miss him getting his second in discus. Edit. To those who keep hemming and hawing over my not pressing charges, know that this isn't even the first time or the worst time I didn't press charges on a convenience store employee. I wish I was better at tagging my content. Anyway, to those who chide me for not pressing charges, for not believing in second chances, may you get 3 of your toes stuck in the hole of your ripped jeans every time you try to put them on. Am I the jerk for treating my daughter-in-law like a kid when she was acting like one? My son and his wife have been staying with us for about a month now while they prepare to move into a new place in May. My wife and I enjoy having them with us, and for the most part, my daughter-in-law is lovely, but she is very messy. I'm retired from the Army, and I've always run my house to a certain set of standards, and I expect them to be followed even by guests. My son has often described his wife as someone who prefers clutter, and she generally likes to have things where she can see them. But after I voiced my displeasure over the clutter in the guest bedroom they are presiding in, as well as in the guest bath they use every day, she did begin to decrease this amount of clutter, but not to the standards I would like in my home. My daughter-in-law still leaves her makeup out in the bathroom until she gets home in afternoons because she runs out of time in the mornings to put them up. To her credit, she does clean everything when she gets home, but I don't appreciate having to stare at the mess for hours until she does get home. I tried handling privately with my son in hopes he could talk to her, and while he did agree, he mostly made excuses about her behavior, equating it to a unstable home life growing up with incompetent parents and in the foster system towards her later teen years. I admit she still is quite young at 20, but my kids knew how to clean up after themselves before they were out of elementary school. My frustrations over the situation grew to a head one day, when yet again she left out makeup in the bathroom, and in response I took a trash bag and placed all the makeup and everything underneath the sink that was hers as well, and then in the guest bedroom, every piece of clothing she owned, etc. I had no intention of actually throwing her belongings in the trash, but I wanted to show how serious I was on the matter, and I thought maybe handling it how I would have handled a teenager would have given her a bit of a wake-up call, since she seemed to have missed out on it in her childhood. My daughter-in-law came home before my son, and when she discovered her things in trash bags outside of the front door, I could tell she was rather shell-shocked. I didn't yell, but I was stern when I explained that her behavior had been very disrespectful, and if it continued, she would have to leave my house. My daughter-in-law didn't say much and just looked at me with wide eyes the whole time. And then when I was done, she apologized and took all of her things back inside the room she was staying in. I could hear her crying, which seemed to me to be dramatic, and when my son got home, he apologized for daughter-in-law's messiness, but said that the way I handled the situation was too far. I told him it was my house, my rules. Now my daughter-in-law has been keeping all of her things in her car and won't even place them in the house at all. She has also become very reserved when I'm around, but is completely fine around my daughters and wife. The mess stopped, but now there is an awkwardness in the house. You're the jerk. 1. You gave them the guest room and guest bathroom for their use. As long as they don't destroy anything, they should be entitled to use it how they see fit. You repeatedly said she does clean up, so she's not trashing your house. 2. While they are staying with you, the space you gave them is their space. They should be entitled to a sense of security and privacy. Creeping into their room to see if she's living up to your ex-military standards is not acceptable. 3. You knew she was in the foster system, which means that she likely did not have strong parental figures to teach her, though it is very clear she is trying to please you. 4. Foster care kids often have to put their belongings in trash bags to go from house to house. They often bounce around the system. It creates a lifetime of problems. You literally made her possibly relive the experiences of coming home to find all her belongings in trash bags. Being told it isn't her home anymore, no wonder she was crying. The fact that she has not argued with you about any of your absolutely ridiculous rules means she's either scared of you or of losing another home, or she's trying very hard to please you, but it's extremely difficult for her. And by the way, hot take here. Have you considered that your control issues, which you blame on being ex-military, are actually responses to having these behaviors grilled into you by said military? This isn't healthy. You need therapy. To add to your last paragraph, I've heard of kids going no contact with parents like this because the expectations are not reasonable for most kids and some young adults, especially if there's any depression or ADHD involved. The no exceptions, no excuses attitude rarely leads to close or meaningful relationships. OP, as someone who had a loving military dad, there is a difference between firm and obsessive. There's also a difference between reasonable and unreasonable expectations. They are adults that were given a separate space temporarily, a space you don't need to look at but choose to, especially their bedroom. Just stay out. Unless you are concerned about mold, dishes, or food, it doesn't actually affect you, and your repeated comment about it being disrespectful isn't true. Leaving clothes on the floor is not the same as breaking things. However, you're the jerk because you are handling her personal items. Even the ones put away is massively disrespectful. Imagine some guy going through your wife's stuff and all of her personal belongings and putting them in a bag for no reason other than to be a jerk to her. I love this because as someone with ADHD, things like running out of time do in fact exist. That would make me upset as it is, let alone any past issues this woman has felt. I could definitely see her struggling to be comfortable with this man again. He treated her worse than like a child. He treated her like she was disposable for not following his rules. Well, what do you think? Did OP take it too far or not? Please let us know. Why on earth should you have to keep the guest bedroom that you're staying in tidy? God, I love the people on Reddit. Our landlord told me, go ahead, call the city inspector. So I did. This happened in 2018. I just moved to a new apartment. It was a 3-bedroom, first-floor apartment, and it had a finished basement. It had 2 bedrooms, a living room, and a kitchen on the first floor. It also had a bedroom with a full bath in the basement and a bar and gaming area. It was also in a very nice area of the city. The apartment was owned by a corporation. Honestly, we loved that apartment until it kept having recurring issues in the basement. The carpet was wet from time to time. At first, the landlord would send a cleaner to come and handle it, but it kept happening. I asked them to check and fix the issue. They did not do it. I told them I'll call the city inspector to check the building. They laughed at me and told me, "Go ahead, call the city inspector." So I did. I called the city twice until I finally was connected to the right department, and they sent an inspector a week later. The inspector found so many building violations. They told me they'd contact the building owner and would come again. The next day, the owner called and begged me to tell them what I know about the problem with the apartment. I told them that I sent complaints multiple times. They should check their record. The city inspector, the owner, and the property manager came 2 weeks after that. The city inspector was letting them have it. He laid it to them and it was bad. They have to deal with structural and foundational issues and some safety issues too. There were 4 tenants in that building, including us. Imagine it was a big colonial, multi-family home divided into 4 apartments. They had to break the lease with all of us to fix the building. They couldn't fix it with us being there. We were ready and already consulted a lawyer. We told them that 1. We want our deposit back before moving out. 2. They paid for all of our moving expenses. 3. They paid for our deposits at the next place. They could not kick us out. They could not rent the apartment after the inspections. There were 4 of us, and we could all sue them for placing us in a dangerous building. In the end, they spent so much money to relocate us and fix the apartment. Don't feel the need to promote one of us because we have things taken care of? Fine, we'll stick to just doing our job. To provide a bit of the backstory, this happened about 4 years ago. Myself and my coworkers, 2 others, were delivery drivers for a large food service company. The lead driver at the time was let go, leaving just myself and my coworkers. Naturally, about a week after he was let go, we started asking our managers when they would be opening up the lead driver position for applications. Their response was simple and expected. "Not right now. We have a lot going on as we're moving into the busy season and we still need to clean out former employees' crap." Not a big deal. There was a lot of BS to clean up after the former lead was let go. He had been stealing from the company. Totals were missing. Truck was thrashed, and he had been using the truck storage facility as his own personal storage unit. We had a lot to deal with. As for the 2 of us working there, I had about 3 years on the job experience, and my coworker had almost 5 in the role. As far as I was concerned, he should be the one getting the promotion. Longer tenure, wife and kids, just me and my cat at the time, and the promotion was an additional $1.50 per hour. No brainer on my end. But him and I both had a feeling they'd want to put me in that position since the big boss butted heads with him a long time ago and they didn't see eye to eye, and I tended to be a bit better with inner office politics. Well, about 3 months after the lead was let go, things settled down and we brought up the issue again. When will the lead position be posted? $1.50 an hour adds up fast, and on a flat 40-hour work week, 4 10-hour days classified into a 5 to 8 hour work week meant at least $132 per paycheck, and more depending on the overtime. And we almost always had 10 to 20 hours of overtime a check. Do the math. When asked again about the position, we were told the same. "We're working on it. Just be patient. As soon as we can, we'll open it up and we'll make one of you the lead." Well, this irritated both of us, but irritated my coworker even more than me because he felt like that position should have already been his. He'd been doing the routing for the day off the clock, only a 10-minute phone call, handling mechanic appointments as we were a satellite operation 4 hours from the DC, communicating with warehouse staff, operation management, etc. I offered to reach out to management, put in my 2 cents, and spur things along. He declined my help as he didn't want to butt heads with the big boss again and possibly risk his job. No problem. So we continued to wait. After 8 months, my coworker was getting quite fed up. Typically, he only talked about something bothering him when he was really ticked off, and he had been talking about this almost every week for a month. So he called up the manager again and asked when they were going to open up the position for applications. The response, "You two been doing a great job down there. Everything's being handled, so we don't feel the need to create a new position." Oh yeah? This ticked us off big time. This was not creating a position. That lead position had been there for years before he was let go. I once again offered my assistance and opinions on how to speed things along and was declined again. That was until he called me 2 days later after stewing on it and told me to do what I want. So I did. The next morning, before unloading the trucks, we sat in the office, drank some coffee, and I told him what we were going to do. We were going to do nothing. We were going to field every single phone call, questions, concerns, issue, and pass it on to the big boss. He doesn't think we need a lead, so we'll just be drivers. So without providing any notice to the manager or the sales reps, here's a few examples, but you'll get the point. Routing? Call big boss. Issue with delivery? Tell the customer to call the sales rep so they can call big boss and he can call us to go ahead and fix it, something we normally would just do. Head mechanic calls us to say we need to schedule a DOT or service. Nope, call the big boss, tell him he needs to call the local mechanic or schedule it yourself. We passed every single phone call and issue off to him. For us, it wasn't a big deal since we could just handle things then and there. A simple go back and pick something up would take 2 minutes. Customer texts us directly, we do it. But we're just drivers, so we ignored the customer, responded back that we couldn't do that anymore and that they would need to call their sales rep. This made it a 15-minute task at the minimum, but was usually around an hour or two before we could get back to the customer. The fallout? We didn't even make it through the first morning before crap hit the fan. As soon as the first issue popped up, our sales rep called me asking why the customer said I couldn't do something. I told her the story and she was ticked. Not at us, but at the big boss. I apologized, reassured her it's not personal, but if they won't pay my coworker to do the job, then we will just do what we are paid to do. My sales rep said she will get this taken care of, but she refuses to work with big boss. She'll quit before that happens. Serious threat from someone with 25 years on the job. Couple hours later, my coworker and I got a call from big boss. He apologized, told us he was wrong, and that he would open up the position for us to apply and asked that we go back to what we were doing. We told him no. Until that position is posted, applicant selected, and one of our pay stubs shows the increase in pay, he can continue to handle the phone calls, but thanked him for the apology. We carried on our merry way, and the next day Big Boss called us, told us the position was listed, asked us each to write up a letter of intent for why we felt like we deserved the position, and they would consider our letters and select one of us. Fantastic progress. My coworker pretty much wrote down on his letter that he had been doing that work for 8 months. He has the seniority, contact information, and knowledge, so he felt he should be considered. I submitted nothing, told my coworker he should have been promoted 8 months ago and sealed the envelope. I, of course, get a phone call the next day from the big boss asking me why I didn't submit my letter, and I told him just that. You should have promoted my coworker 8 months ago, and I don't want the position. Took a few days, but arms were twisted, and my coworker got his well-deserved promotion. The real push was the sales rep. We found out a couple months after she had called her vice president, told him this was bogus, and refused to have to work with Big Boss since she couldn't stand him. Well, the vice president of sales got together with the vice president of operations and made the magic happen. Coworker thanked me for the help, bought me a couple T-bone steaks, and said he never wants to get on my bad side. Neighbor let their brats take all of our Easter eggs. So this happened about 4 days ago, and I'm still livid. So for a quick background, I, 25 female, was in a pretty bad wreck a few months ago. Because of my injuries, I haven't been able to work, so between medical bills and lawyer fees, money's been pretty tight. My sister, Anna, has 4 kids, and I have a 3-year-old son. Before the wreck, I always went out of my way to make sure the kids had good holidays. My siblings and I didn't get anything growing up, so I spoil them. My sister is a single mom, so money is tight for her too, which is why I tried to be a good aunt and go all out. I decided to forego the extravagant Easter baskets from years past because it was out of my budget. I sat them down and explained the situation. They understood and asked if we could do a family Easter egg hunt instead. I got cheap eggs in specific colors to make sure each kid knew which eggs to hunt for and bought name brand candy to put in them. I added a few dollars in some of them and a few little toys and trinkets I knew the kids would like. We decided to do it at Anna's house because she had a yard. It took me an hour to hobble around hiding eggs, but it was worth it. We started, and 2 boys came sprinting across the yard with pillowcases. They started picking up eggs with our kids. We tried to explain that this was a family thing, but they ignored us. Their dad came out while this was happening, and I tried to explain. I usually wouldn't mind, but not this time. The dad talked over me. He thanked us for doing this and said his kids were thrilled when they saw me hiding the eggs. I'm sure you don't mind a few of their friends joining in. They're just kids and they get excited. After they were done, they ran back home. They had taken most of the eggs and had messed up the number that each of our kids got. My youngest niece had yellow eggs, and they had only found 2 of them since the neighbor kids had taken them all. The kids were upset, and I was mad. The next day, I went over to their house and asked to speak to their dad. I said that I didn't care that they joined in because they were just kids, but I needed him to pay me back so I could buy more eggs to redo it with just my family. He lost it on me. He said that candy and plastic eggs are cheap, so it shouldn't matter about paying me back because it wasn't much. He started ranting about how I should have told them to stop and how I was a massive jerk for demanding money because his kids wanted to be included in what their friends were doing. He called us greedy and refused to pay me just because my family was upset that they didn't get enough eggs. He basically called me stupid and told me that the point of an egg hunt was competition. I talked to my family about this situation. My sister agrees with what I did, but my mom said I was a jerk for demanding he pay me back because it was just some cheap Easter eggs and candy, so I should just let it go. Not the jerk. An egg hunt in your own yard is not an event open to the public, and you had every right to be angry. That man would have gotten told off that day, and I would have demanded that he be the one to tell his kids to put back every single egg that they stole. You don't come into someone's yard to steal things that don't belong to you, and that's what they did. If the eggs were so cheap, he could have gotten some for his own kids. If you have an Easter egg hunt next year, each egg has a slip of paper with the name of candy on it. After the Easter egg hunt, you all go into the house where you let the kids hand you their slips of paper and you hand them the candy. If neighbor kids steal the plastic eggs, they won't get the candy. I am with you. I would have been furious. That neighbor is a jerk and is teaching his kids poor manners. Having to do this is such BS, but I do think it's a doable workaround for next year. Good thinking. Well, what would you do in this situation? Would you try to get the neighbor to pay you back or not? Please let us know. I would have yelled at those brats to get off my property. I don't care how old you are. You don't come onto my property and steal my crap. Months of paid vacation? I'll take it. This happened in Germany, so the laws are different to other countries, especially to the USA. I was working for a family-owned business, about 40 employees, a couple years ago. My time there wasn't the best because I had a huge problem with my boss's younger brother. He was on an early pension and officially just working on a small part-time contract, while in reality working full-time with getting most of his salary out of pocket. That I was hired meant for him that he just worked about half the hours he worked before, and having a huge pay cut because of me really ticked him off, as you can imagine. He talked bad about me behind my back all the time and tried to get me fired. Dealing with him was a pain, but I didn't have to deal with him often. My coworkers were nice and the pay was good, so I didn't care about finding another job, despite my relationship with my boss and his wife getting worse over time too. My boss even came with me to 2 deliveries to customers because his brother probably told him I would waste time during the deliveries. On one day, I had to do a delivery with my boss's wife's car because the company car I normally used was at the inspection that morning, and the timing couldn't have been worse. I scratched the fender of her car on a wall when I tried to get out of a parking spot. The scratch was barely noticeable, but I immediately reported it to one of my coworkers so no one could say that I tried to put it under the rug. I did the delivery, and when I came back, my boss's wife was already waiting for me. She went completely crazy, screamed at me for ruining her car without inspecting the damage before, and said that she will take the money for the repair from my paycheck. I told her that I won't pay for anything because the insurance will pay for it anyways, and that's what made her snap and ended up slapping me. I immediately turned around, grabbed my stuff, clocked out, and went to the doctor to get a sick note because of mental stress, which I threw into the company's mailbox later that evening. 2 days later, I got a termination letter in the mail and had to laugh while reading just the first sentence. We are terminating your work contract immediately, or if this isn't applicable, within the legal 30 days. To people who aren't familiar with German workers' laws, it's illegal to terminate a contract immediately and within the legal period of time in the same termination letter. You can do one or the other, but not both at the same time. So I went to the government office to apply for unemployment and hired a lawyer to sue my boss for illegal termination. Over 2.5 months went by until I got a court date, and my boss was really upset when the judge explained to him that the termination was illegal and that he had to pay me for the last 2.5 months. But the illegal termination wasn't the only mistake he made. The judge gave me 2 options. I can accept an immediate termination on that day and leave without compensation, or I can have a 2-month salary compensation, but I have to work another month for the company. My boss laughed and said that I'm too scared to go back to work and that it makes him happy that I leave the court unemployed. He didn't look that happy anymore when I asked him, "Why should I be scared? Do you want to hurt me like your wife did?" So I took option B and went to work the next morning. My boss's brother already was waiting for me to hand me the termination letter and made comments about how difficult the next 30 days would be for me. I checked the termination letter, and after I've seen that everything was right, I just said that I'm not feeling well, turned around and went to my doctor to get another 30-day sick note because of burnout. So in the end, I had 3.5 months vacation with full pay, 2 months salary compensation, and he had to pay for my lawyer too because he lost in court. I could have sued his wife for slapping me, but that would have been too much stress for maybe a couple €100. Would I be the jerk if I call the cops on my son? My son, 13 male, has repeatedly stolen from us over the past 2 years. Each time he has denied it, even when we found proof it was him. Last year, he took my husband's, male 48, bank card, added it to his Google account on an old phone, and then spent $300 on a downloaded basketball game. We found it by accident when we found him on the phone, did a search of his Google account, and found the card linked to it. He completely denied it was him and blamed his younger brother, who's 10. His brother has his own phone and never uses his older brother's. There were consequences. We grounded him and took the phone off him. The new phone is on Google Family Link, so we have a lock to prevent him buying anything. Yesterday, we discovered that someone had made 2 payments on our credit card, one for a laptop for $2,000, which was declined, and the other for a bike for $3,000, which went through. We spoke to our credit card company, and they refused to refund the money as we had been to the store before. The $2,000 attempted spend was at a store we use, but where we have never used the card before, hence it was declined. We went to the bike store where someone had spent $3,000 and they agreed to refund the money, minus the admin fee they got charged for refunds. They told us the order was placed online and printed the order for it. They said it was a click and collect order. It had my husband's name on it, but my son's email address and telephone number. They said that they phoned the number after the order was made yesterday and spoke to the person who placed the order. They said that the person was clearly a kid and was unhappy when they said that the card holder had to be present when the bike was collected. We checked my son's email and there was no evidence of an order being placed, but there was evidence on his call log of a 2-minute call with the bike shop the day before. We also found an email from the computer shop in his email, and when we clicked on the account information, it opened in his Safari and had his username and password saved. When we went into the account, the $2,000 computer was in the basket. Despite all the evidence against him, he has blamed his younger brother. His younger brother was on my laptop in the lounge with me when the 2 incidents happened, so we know it was not him. My husband had left his wallet out, and the card was still there, so we know the card has not been dropped or stolen. My eldest swears it was not him. This is a significant amount of money that we cannot afford, and we are very lucky to have got most of it. My question is, would I be the jerk if I go to the police? Info. What are you expecting the police to do? Sounds like your son needs therapy. Seems like she somehow wants her son to be responsible for the money spent instead of her. I don't know why they didn't just return the bike or why the store would have allowed a 13-year-old to use someone else's credit card. OP. He paid for it online, not in-store. The card was taken from my husband's wallet to make the payment and then returned to his wallet immediately afterwards. The bike was still in the shop as they had insisted that the card holder be present when it was collected. They refunded us most of the money, minus the administration fee for processing the refund. I'm confused. How can the police help you? I mean this in the gentlest way possible, but why don't you parent your kid? He does not need a phone or a computer. A lot of us grew up without them. He doesn't need to hang out with friends. He needs school, home, and chores until he can fess up and realize what he did was wrong. Also, therapy is a must. ETA. I have a 17-year-old son who will graduate in 1 month. He has a school-issued laptop to do schoolwork. He's a good kid and a teenager. On his rare grounding occasions, I have taken their phone and laptop I paid for, but never touched his school-issued laptop. He doesn't need therapy, he needs parenting. I'd ground the little jerk for 6 weeks minimum and take all electronics away for 12. Well, adjusted kids don't usually steal thousands of dollars and lie about it. Sometimes therapy is parenting. Well, what do you think? Should OP call the cops on her son or not? Please let us know. Aren't you glad we don't have any kids, Reddit boy? Am I the jerk for telling my wife to stop baking so often? My wife, Amanda, who's 33, took up baking as a hobby during the first lockdown and really threw herself into it. We got one of those Kenwood mixers for the kitchen and different tools and pans. She learned how to make all kinds of amazing desserts and cakes. She even discussed starting a side business one day. I know she's very passionate about it, and I love that. The problem is that it's become every day now. She's a stay-at-home mom and manages to make time. I've been trying to lose my extra lockdown pounds for the past year now, and every attempt is thwarted by the smell of some kind of new cookie or cake or pastry. I've actually put on weight since I vowed to lose it. I'm 250 pounds, which is the highest weight I've ever been. It's impossible to be healthy when there's so many home-baked goods in the house. Our entire family has put on weight too. Our daughter got a letter from the school nurse saying that she had been gaining too much, which Amanda completely dismissed. I used to take our two sons on runs with me, but they never want to go anymore. And when they do, they just moan, "I'm going too fast," and they get out of breath. They want to go home to play Xbox. There's always fights as well about who had how many of each pastry, and it feels like feeding time at the animal house because they all want to get their fair share before their siblings. Call me old-fashioned or the food police, but I really don't think that kids should be having desserts and home-baked goods every day, especially in the quantities we seem to be getting through. Even my mother commented on how it seems that we've all gotten chubby. Amanda is the exception to this. I suspect a little that she pushes the treats onto me and the kids because she wants to bake but doesn't want to put on weight herself, as she's always been very concerned with her weight and size. I talked to her about it, and I asked her that maybe she could bake less often or give the food to other people because it's not good for us to have around the house all the time. She said that I wasn't being supportive of her passion. She said before she feels useless because she never got back to work or to her career again, even though I appreciate the work she does around the home. I told her about how I'm trying to lose weight and be healthier, but it's really challenging to keep to any goals. And she said that I should just not eat what she makes, which is easier said than done. When I mentioned the kids, she thought I was implying she was a bad mother. She says that it makes them happy and she wasn't going to tell them what they can and can't eat if they're hungry. I told her that if they grow into obese adults one day and they wonder why that is, she'll be to blame, and she hasn't spoken to me since. Am I the jerk for putting the responsibility of the family's health on her shoulders? Edit. I highlighted a part I think many people were skipping over as they are suggesting it in the comments. She doesn't want the food going to anyone else, homeless shelters, group homes, etc., because she feels like the recipes aren't perfect yet, so she wants to keep practicing with the family. When I make those suggestions, she thinks I'm implying that we don't like her baking and gets upset. She does have anxiety, and I feel like this might play a part. Edit 2. Thank you everyone for the responses and suggestions. A few people have mentioned about eating disorders, and Amanda has a history of this. She was fully recovered when we met. It seems like that might be linked to the anxiety around her baking. Letting me and my kids have this food could be her way of making peace with how she doesn't allow herself to, or exerting control over our diets herself, or our weight gain making her look slimmer in comparison. She sees a therapist once a month for anxiety, but she's not spoken to anyone specifically about eating disorders for a while, and it wasn't on my radar at all. I think I'm going to somehow find a way to broach this subject with her. I'm also going to try and get the kids into a doctor's to do some blood tests and health checkup. Actually, I should get one done too. I don't want the kids to feel in any way responsible or at fault for this, especially our daughter, so we'll also have to be gentle here. But my main concern is the amount of sugar they must be having. Hopefully, words from the doctor might help Amanda see the reality of the problem and how it is affecting the kids. I don't know the route to take with the baking, but I think I'm going to have to set some boundaries with the kids, even if it means throwing away food and hurting Amanda's feelings. It's not fair to the kids to let it continue as it is. Also, thank you to those who made me feel better about my weight loss failings given the situation. I know it's my fault I've put on the weight, but it has felt like an uphill battle not to in this environment. Not the jerk. When the school nurse has to send a note home, there's an issue. That part really stood out to me as well. I didn't even know schools were allowed to do this, though I imagine it's not super common. It's very common. There are guidelines and required weight checks in many states. I get those letters every year because my kids are small but healthy. Not the jerk. People who are saying, have better self-control, probably have a much healthier relationship with food than people like you and me. My favorite thing in the world is sweets, and I love to bake, but I don't do it that often because I know it's hard to resist. I can resist once in a while if I'm very motivated, but every day, not a chance. I don't blame you at all for asking her to tone it down, It's not even that you asked her to stop baking, but you offered a good compromise of giving her finished products away to other people. If she loves baking, that's great, but it doesn't give her the right to insist that her family eat everything she ever makes. You're the jerk. Not for being concerned about your kid's health, that's reasonable, but your lack of self-control is your own fault, and blaming your wife because you can't stop yourself from eating too much is unfair. I get it. I have an unhealthy relationship with food too, but it's my relationship with food and it's my responsibility to handle it. I recommend seeing a dietitian and learning to take responsibility for your own eating habits. It's the only way you're going to be successful long-term at weight loss. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his wife? Please let us know. I've got a solution. Maybe you can just give all those treats to Reddit boy and I. Yeah. Am I the jerk for sometimes interrupting my girlfriend's skincare routine? I'm 29, male, and my girlfriend is 28. We've been together for a little over a year. As some background, I'm generally laid back, and she can be a bit type A. Sometimes we clash because of that. She has an overly complicated skincare routine that she does every night. It's seriously 5 or more different steps. I kinda knew about this before I moved in with her, but it was never a big deal because we were only spending the night with each other about once a week, so I didn't realize exactly how serious she is about it. Basically, she doesn't want to do anything after her routine. She doesn't want to leave the house or bum chicka wow afterwards because she doesn't want to sweat or expose her skin unnecessarily after she's applied some kind of chemical. I don't know exactly what. I didn't understand this part. To be fair, she usually does the routine close to bedtime, but sometimes things will come up, and I'll ask her to go pick something up from the store or things like that. We had a conversation about this because she felt like I was asking for stuff after her routine on purpose to mess with her. So she started asking me if I need something or if I want to boom chicka wow before she does her routine. But sometimes I'll say no and then realize I actually do want something, so I'll ask and she gets upset with me and refuses. It's only maybe once or twice a week, which isn't often at all. She says I'm being inconsiderate, but it's not like I'm doing this on purpose. I feel like she's being unreasonable and that routine interruptions are normal and nothing to be upset about. Am I the jerk here? Edit. Goodness, I didn't expect to wake up from my nap and be torn to shreds. Way too many comments to respond to. I get it, I need to say sorry and I will when she gets home tonight. To answer some of the most common questions I've seen that I didn't already answer. The store is a couple miles away, and there are no public transit options available that late. I can't afford to Uber, and my girlfriend won't let me sync her cards to my Uber account or anything. My girlfriend offered to pay for a driver's ed course, but what's the point if I don't have a car? She wouldn't let me use hers because it's really nice, and I'd be too new of a driver for her to be comfortable with that. I don't think that being a new driver means being a bad driver, but okay. And I'm looking for a new job. I just wanted to take a little time off to relax, so I haven't been intensely applying, but I do apply for jobs at least once a week. You're the jerk. Let's break down some of your comments here. You can't drive for some reason. You're almost 30. It's time for you to figure out a way to manage this that does not involve your significant other being at your beck and call. Learn to drive, get a bicycle, set aside enough money for Uber or a taxi. Plan your day to take advantage of whatever mass transit is available. Pretty much anything to be an independent adult here that doesn't expect his partner to run all his errands at a moment's notice. The items you need are not life and death. You're just worried you won't remember them later. Even assuming you have some sort of executive functioning disorder that affects your memory, dude, there's an app for that. Actually, there's about 100 apps for that. Everything from a notepad on your phone to a shared Google Doc with the person you have doing your shopping for you. You could even go old school and put a paper notepad or whiteboard on the inside of your front door to write things down when they come to mind. It's time to put some coping skills into play here. This is not a nightly routine, this is a few times a week routine. It's important to her. She even asks you if there's anything you forgot before she starts, which is way more accommodating than she needs to be. You're the jerk. You sound extremely self-centered and selfish. It's very normal for women to have skincare routines that are 5+ steps. She literally warns you before she does it to avoid this exact issue. If you aren't intentionally messing with her, you must be extremely selfish. If you need something from the store after she's done her bedtime skincare routine, then maybe make a note for yourself to get that thing tomorrow. She's not your maid. She's not your mom. She doesn't have to get you something from the store because you might forget you need it the next day. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his girlfriend? Please let us know. Homeboy must look like Brad Pitt or something. Don't know why else she'd be with him. Stiletto heels and rubber floors. I, 30 female, used to work for a company that outsourced a lot of graphic designs and media work to other local contractor companies. Normally my manager, 49 male, would be the one to visit these contractors with a brief and storyboard designs, but occasionally I would attend instead. We'd been working with this particular contractor for a few weeks, and on quite short notice, I was asked to cover a meeting. No problem, I said. I get along well with my manager, and he'd even loaded our van with all of our materials. 3 to 4 flip charts, and 8 or 9 small boxes of blank product templates. I had not visited this particular graphics consultancy contractor before, but when I arrived, it was clear that they had drawn inspirations for their office layout from Google. You know the type. Colorful wallpaper, beanbag chairs, arcade machines in the break room, etc. Everybody was dressed casually. Jeans, t-shirts, trainers. I didn't think anything of it until I was shown to the room where we'd be having our meeting. I think they called it the Inspiration Activity Suite or something. No doubt, where they'd do office yoga at lunchtime or something. There were 3 employees from the contractor in the meeting and just me from my company. Anyway, I straight away noted that the floor was that soft rubber style that you normally see in gyms and kids' playpens. I was in my standard office attire, which included a pair of high heels. I could clearly see that this floor was not high heel friendly. To be respectful, I went to take off my heels before I stepped into the room. I was asked by one of the guys, who turned out to be their illustrations director, "Please put your shoes back on." I politely pointed out that I didn't think my heels were suitable for the floor, and perhaps I should leave my shoes at the door. I was told again, in a slightly less friendly tone, "You must wear shoes at all times in this building." I politely smiled and said, "That's fine. Would there perhaps be a different room that we could use, please?" This time I was told in a pretty direct tone, "This room is fine. We never have any issues when your manager visits. I think this is suitable. Can we focus on the project instead of critiquing our personal protective equipment policy, please?" That little dig annoyed me. I'm a customer in their office. I'm the only one wearing heels in the entire building, and I'm trying not to ruin their trendy office space. Plus, there was no industrial equipment in this office. What was their PPE policy if everyone was wearing jeans and trainers? Anyway, I took my 2 steps into the meeting room and could feel my heels sink instantly. Well, too late now. It's a safety policy, I thought to myself. The malicious compliance? I set up each storyboard several feet away from each of the others and moved them around a few times in the meeting. I brought in all the boxes and laid them out on either side of the room, even though we didn't need the boxes for this meeting. I made as much effort as I could to walk around and be as animated as I could throughout the entire session. At the end of it, I surveyed my work. I had left little heel imprints everywhere I had been walking in the room. The floor wasn't technically ruined, but it was definitely less sightly than it was before I walked around on it. I'm not a big lady. I'm 5'7" and about 160, but obviously the soft rubber floor wasn't designed with stiletto heels in mind. I'm not quite sure if the contractor guy had figured out why I had originally asked, but they seemed a little bit quieter when we shook hands at the end of the meeting. They even offered to let me wait in reception and they'd bring all the storyboards and boxes out themselves. "Just grab a coffee," they said. "We'll get your equipment for you." I visited their office again a few weeks later with my manager. I purposely wore flat shoes that day, and they had put up a big sign outside that particular room saying, "No unsuitable footwear." By the time we'd finished the project about 6 months later, the rubber floor had been removed and replaced with a more traditional carpet. I'd like to say there was more to the story, but I never went back to that office, and they lost their contract for not being able to deliver the required samples for 3 separate projects. Perhaps they weren't wearing the correct PPE. Something about those trendy offices always screams, "We have horrible upper management, so we're trying to hide it by looking good." Karen demands my beach house. 10 years ago, my parents passed within 6 months of each other. I was 33, male at the time, and my little sister, Sarah, was 23, female. Losing our parents at such a young age has been rough for the both of us, but probably more consequential for Sarah being such a young adult. Upon their passing, we inherited their home, a paid-off beach house on the Central Oregon coast. I pled with Sarah to keep it with me as a joint asset/vacation home. Honestly, a lot of my motive was looking out for her and the fear of giving a 23-year-old her the one and only inheritance in one fell swoop that she could conceivably blow through and have nothing to show for it in a few years, especially as she was grieving in her natural party phase of life. I wasn't rich by any means, but was modestly comfortable with a steady job, an employed wife, we're both nurses, and we purchased a townhome together a couple years prior. I saw the house as an appreciating asset, an opportunity to generate a modest monthly income that we could both use. Plus, who doesn't want a beach house in the family? We both lived in Portland, 3.5-hour commute from the property. I saw it as an easy way to generate some steady income, but she wanted to cash out and move to California. Despite my pleas, I had no authority to stop her. The house appraised at $260,000, and my wife and I made the decision to buy her out, thus taking on a $130,000 mortgage. She got her check and did the things I feared she would do. Started with purchasing a new $40,000 SUV, YOLO'd to LA, and leased a swanky apartment with her friend. I didn't hear much from her for the next couple of years as she partied it up and blew through the remainder of her money, then moved to Vegas for a while, finally coming back to Portland 2 years ago with nothing to show for herself. As for me, keeping the house has been a struggle. It cost us countless expenses, bad luck with lousy tenants. In hindsight, we couldn't really afford the mortgage, and I look at it now as a decade wasted and unnecessary struggles. The good news is the house is probably worth $420,000 now. We have 3 kids, a 4-year-old girl and twins born last year. Our townhome is crowded to say the least, so we're looking to cash out the beach house and sell our home to buy a house to fit our growing family. I mentioned my intentions to Sarah, who freaked out, saying I can't, and that home is all we have left of our family, which is ludicrous. We didn't grow up there. Our parents bought that house 4 years before they passed with settlement money. I never lived in it, and Sarah only did for less than a year. She says everything I said about keeping it in the family was a lie, so I should sell it back to her for what I paid. I can see the manipulative BS aspect of her play here, but I think I feel pity and guilt for her because it seems like she's finally legitimately dealing with the trauma of our parents passing and emotionally clinging on to this house as a piece of them. I'm not giving it to her. Wife would never let me, but kind of feeling like a jerk. Am I the jerk for not giving my neighbor's kids good food? So I know that this is really stupid, but some of my friends have told me that I'm in the wrong here. To get started, here's our cast. We've got me, female 38. We've got neighbor, female 32. We've got my husband, male 39. We've got kid 1 who's 8, kid 2 who's 7, and my kid who's 8. My neighbor moved in not too long ago with her 2 sons. Seeing that she had a lot of unpacking to do, I went over to her house and offered to babysit her kids for her. She thanked me and walked her kids over to my house. I kept some of my son's toys from when he was younger. He's moved out already, and set them up in my yard. My daughter is fairly extroverted and immediately went outside to play with them. It was around noon at that time, so I started to make lunch. I made some turkey sandwiches with American cheese, a simple lunch that we always have. I brought out some plates so that the kids could eat outside on our benches. The kids loved it, and 30 minutes later the sandwiches were gone and they were back playing soccer and tag. A few hours later, the neighbor's kids and my kid marched inside and sat down, tired. I put on some cartoons and told them I would be right back as I left to go get the neighbor to pick up her kids. She looked tired, but was happy that she didn't have to deal with the boys running around while she unpacked. She came over and took her boys. By this time, my husband was parking in our driveway, home from work. My daughter had a fun time telling her father all about the day while I ordered pizza on my phone. About 5 minutes later, while I was still asking what everyone wanted, I heard a knock on my door. It was the neighbor. I thought she was going to thank me again, but she got angry and shouted at me. The following is some basic dialogue from what I can remember, though this did happen a few weeks ago. Me: "Oh, hey neighbor." Neighbor: "Look, we need to talk right now." Me: "Oh, sure. What do you need?" "Well, my sons told me that you gave them sandwiches for lunch." Me: "Yes, I did. They really Well, that is not enough for my boys. They're growing boys, and they need to have good food, and not whatever you gave them." Me: "Really?" "Yes." No. And I shut the door in her face. My daughter didn't really hear any of our conversation, but she asked me. I just told her that the neighbor didn't like sandwiches. She didn't bother to ask further and watched some shows in her room. My husband just laughed, and so did I. The lady got mad that I fed food to her sons for free, right? But as it turns out, 3 of my close friends told me that I was rude and I should have given them something better. We had mashed potatoes and some leftover pork that wouldn't take more than 29 minutes to heat up and serve, but I didn't feel like giving them that. I don't see the problem with what I did. But I trust my friends, and I want to know if I should apologize. So, Reddit, am I the jerk? My sister demands I hire her to be my wedding planner. I, 26 female, am getting married to my fiance, 27 male, on June 24th of next year. We have done a few things on planning it, but it's very stressful and we both work full-time. Plus, I'm in grad school, so we just don't have the time. Well, I called my mom about 2 weeks ago and mentioned how hard planning a wedding was, and she told me that we should invest in a wedding planner. Duh, I can't believe we forgot these exist. She also said she could recommend one to us, but I told her I'd have to have a talk with my fiance about our budget and we'd see. Then we talked about other stuff, and that was pretty much how it went. Well, my fiance and I have talked with a few wedding planners since then, and we found the perfect match for us. She's been so great and so helpful, and I'm so thankful for her. I talked with my mom a few days ago and told her that we'd found a wedding planner, and I thanked her for the advice. Well, my mom told me that she was trying to nudge me to hire my sister, who's 29, as she's just getting into the wedding planner business, and that's what her recommendation was for. Now, I love my sister and I think she's great, but I also know my sister and she's not great on staying with jobs. She was not good taking orders and quit stable jobs. She started a resin business that didn't take off and she didn't want to market for it. She got caught into a pyramid scheme which she barely got out of. My parents paid it off. And the last time I heard, 2 months ago, she was trying to be a nail technician. I told my mom that I love my sister, but I want a professional to do my wedding. Well, come to find out that my mom had me on speakerphone and my sister was in the room with her. This led to my sister grabbing the phone from my mom and telling me that I'm a stuck-up jerk and that I'm pretentious and I need to get off my high horse and other things. When my mom finally took the phone back, with my sister still yelling, she told me that I was being mean and unfair, and that I should just give my sister a chance, to which I said no again because her attitude to rejection just solidified my opinion. My mom told me I was being judgmental and that she wouldn't answer my calls until I apologized to my sister and hire her to plan my wedding. My fiance is obviously on my side, but my dad said I should at least apologize. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. The position was already filled before the sister offered her services. It would have been better to simply say that, but I don't blame you for, very reasonably, pointing out all the reasons that this was a bad idea. If you apologize, do it for you, not them. Do it for a drama-free wedding. But know 100% that you are not to blame. Well, what do you think? Should OP hire her sister to be her wedding planner or not? Please let us know. No, but she should uninvite her from the wedding and the mother. The sooner you kick idiots out of your life, the better your life will be. I told my brother-in-law he can have an opinion when he starts paying bills. I'm 35, male. My wife is 38, female, and her brother, Ian, is 44. He just lost his job about 6 months ago. When his lease was up in February, he asked if he could stay with us temporarily. My wife and I agreed he could until he found a job. Things were fine at first, but then he just started giving his opinion on everything. He asked if we could be quieter at night after 10 since we wake him up when we go to bed. It seemed like he was telling us when to go to bed. He makes requests for dinner daily, like we're his personal chef. I told him to make himself at home, and he's more than welcome to use the kitchen. He said he doesn't know how to cook. He asked us to get a different detergent because ours makes him itchy. I told my wife he can buy his own laundry detergent. He must have some money because he goes out with his buddies on Friday night. I could go on and on about his opinions. Things got worse, and Ian acts like this is his house and he's in charge. I was watching TV the other day, and he came into the living room and said he wanted to watch the baseball game. I said, "Doesn't the TV in the guest room work?" He said, "Yeah, but I like this one better." I kept my show on, and he stood there for a few minutes like he expected me to turn my show off, then went back in his room. I have my daughter, who's 12, this weekend, not my wife's daughter. Yesterday, my daughter asked us if her friend could come over today, and my wife and I said yes. Her friend was dropped off at like 11. They're basically watching TV and playing video games, not being loud or obnoxious or anything. Well, Ian walked into the living room and asked her friend who she was. Her friend said her name. Ian looked at me and asked to speak in private. We went in my office and he said, "It'd be nice if you cleared it with me before letting some random kids come over." I said, "First of all, she's my daughter's friend. Second of all, I don't need your permission. It's our house." He said, "Well, I live here too, and I don't want kids I don't know running around." I said, "You live here for free. You can have an opinion when you start paying bills." He went and talked to my wife after our conversation and then left. My wife said she knows his outspoken nature gets on my nerves, but it was rude to throw not working and being unable to pay bills in his face like that, and now he feels unwelcome. Honestly, good. He should feel unwelcome. Maybe then he'll get a job. Every time I tell him about a place hiring, he says, "That's beneath me," or "I'm too smart to work there." A job is a job. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. Your wife is the problem now. It started out as a brother-in-law problem, but once your wife took his side, she became the problem. His refusal to work is not your problem, and now it seems he's using weaponized incompetence to get his way. Honestly, good for you for not responding to the bit about clearing it with him. How is the wife okay with the brother trying to tell her daughter what to do? It's not the wife's daughter, so she probably doesn't feel like it matters as much. Not the jerk. It sounds like he thinks because he's your wife's older brother, he ranks in the hierarchy of your household somehow. Time to throw him out, dude. It's time for Ian to move on. Why would you put up with this in your own home? Let brother-in-law crash with someone else until he finds a job. Tell him exactly why. He came in like he runs the place, and you're not okay with that. Not the jerk. Am I the jerk for wanting my sons to stop excluding my daughter? My wife and I have 4 kids. 3 boys who are 26, 25, and 23, and a girl who's 20. Some of you might wonder if we kept trying until we had our daughter, and unfortunately, you'd be right. We've always wanted a daughter, and I'll admit that this desire made us less than ideal parents to our boys. We were so fixated on the idea of a daughter that we heavily favored her after she was born, much to the detriment of our brothers. Through therapy and counseling, we now know that we have made them their sister's scapegoat, turning our daughter not only into a spoiled golden child, but also a common enemy for the boys and the bearer of their resentment. Their childhood, I think, made them especially as close as brothers, but it only served to highlight just how much they despised us and their sister. By the time we realized our mistakes, it was too late to undo the damage. The eldest 2 had already cut us off, and less than 2 years of therapy and counseling did next to nothing for our youngest son. He graduated high school, and we never heard from him too since. We are saddened that the boys couldn't find it in them to see that their sister is also a victim of our failures, but we agreed to give them the space to heal at their own pace. This changed when we found out that our oldest is about to be married to his fiancée. We didn't even know he got engaged. We had to find out from a distant relative's congratulations post on Facebook. We were hurt, but mostly we understand that we no longer have the right to expect an invitation. We warned our daughter not to snoop and to just let what happens happen, but she didn't listen. She found out that our oldest posted about how much he loves his brothers and couldn't choose between the 2 of them which one would be his best man, so he's going to have them both share the same role in the wedding. Our daughter is understandably upset and sees this post as a deliberate snub to her. My wife and I do feel that the post is unnecessarily inflammatory and doesn't need to be posted to the public, regardless if he was expecting for us to read it or not. We tried to contact the boys once more, and to our disappointment, the first thing they said to us in years is that we all are formally uninvited. Our daughter hasn't stopped crying since. Their mother and I have accepted our estrangement. It's the consequences of our own actions. But is it bad for us to want for our daughter what the boys had found in each other? The way we see it, leaving things to fester might do just as much harm as trying to intervene at this point. So, am I the jerk for reaching out to our sons on our daughter's behalf? You're the jerk. It sucks that your daughter is now being punished for your and your wife's failings as parents, but guess what? Her brother's wedding is not about her. Tell me, does she keep in constant contact with her brothers? Does she really know anything about them at all? If the answer is no, then why should she expect a place of honor among his wedding party? You are still making her the golden child and scapegoating your sons. Go back to therapy. I was just about to type the same thing. They aren't done with therapy. What OP described is exactly the behavior they said they were aware of and were trying to stop. I don't know you, OP, but I want to go no contact with you too. Ugh. You're the jerk. So let me see if I have this right. Your oldest is getting married, an event that is entirely about and managed by him and his wife. He made a post praising his brothers for the support the 2 of you never gave him, and yet again, you made it about yourselves and your daughter. You literally went right back to the same crap they cut you off for. You didn't call to ask if you could attend. You didn't call just to give him congratulations. No, you called him to guilt trip him for not involving y'all in his wedding party. So once again, you condoned your daughter's selfishness and chose to support only her again. If it was your daughter and they threw a fit, wondering why they weren't in the wedding planning after being estranged, what exactly would you tell them? The answer you're ashamed to give is the reason you're disinvited. Am I the jerk for blocking my mother for taking a gift that my boyfriend bought me? I spent my birthday, April 13th, with my boyfriend a couple days ago, and one of the gifts included a ceramic cupcake. About a month ago, we were sharing stories about our childhood when I mentioned a particular story that I didn't realize still bothered me. A long time ago, I went to a pottery shop where I painted a pre-made ceramic cupcake at my friend's birthday party. I chose the cupcake because you can store small things, for example, jewelry in it. I worked really hard to paint it and it looked really nice. It looked so nice that my mom wanted it for herself. So we played a game of cards. If my mom won, she got to keep the cupcake. If I won, I got McDonald's. Unfortunately, I lost. A year later, I talked to my mom about how I wished I didn't bet the cupcake, and she offered to play another round of cards. In the end, I won, but she refused to give the cupcake back. This resulted in an argument, but with me being a kid, I couldn't really do anything about it. Fast forward to a month ago. I brought this up to my boyfriend while joking around. However, he said I seemed really passionate about it when I was explaining it. So he tried to find something that matched my description, and considering that he's never seen it, I would say he was pretty spot on. I really appreciated the gift because it showed how attentive and caring my boyfriend was. As such, I kept the cupcake on my desk so that when I'm studying for my final exams, I could look at it and be reminded of positive thoughts only. My mom came today, April 16th, to celebrate my belated birthday. When she entered my room, her eyes immediately went to the cupcake on my desk, so I explained to her the story behind it. She laughed and said, "Wouldn't it look nice if I had both?" I laughed with her, but deep down I was annoyed. Throughout the night, she kept making side comments about the cupcake, but I mostly brushed them off. When she had finally left my place, I entered my room to see that the cupcake was missing. I called her repeatedly until she finally picked up. At first, she said she didn't know where it was, before finally admitting that she put it in her purse. She claimed that she wanted to take a picture of the two cupcakes together. I was so upset that I immediately hung up. My mom lives about 2 hours away, and it would be hard to get there without a car. This made me feel teary-eyed, and eventually I started crying. Between this and final exams, I felt very overwhelmed. I sent her a text message basically saying how upset I was, and she apologized, but I was still upset. I told her, "Don't call or text me. Send me an email if it's an emergency," and blocked her phone number. However, after thinking about it, I'm starting to feel bad. Am I just overreacting? Am I the jerk? ETA. Wow, I didn't really expect this to blow up. The incident with the original cupcake happened when I was in grade 5, so I was either 10 or 11. Calling the cops is not an option. She pays a good chunk of my university expenses, and her job requires her to have a clean record. The last thing I would want is for her to get fired. My mother does have a history of mental health issues. She was diagnosed with depression and bipolar disorder in 2015. I won't go into details, but I feel like permanently going no contact with my mom might cause her to spiral again. This is partially why I feel like a jerk, because I know how much my mom depends on me for emotional support. The cupcake isn't an isolated incident, but it's been years since I've had any major issues with my mom. I wish I could share all the stories I have with her, but then this would turn into a novel, and I'm sure the mods wouldn't be too happy with that. Not the jerk. What is that lady thinking? Taking the first cupcake made her a jerk, but this is the icing on the cupcake. Exactly. She derives joy from seeing you upset at her hands. Keep the boyfriend, maybe get a new cupcake, but ditch the mom. Let her have her cake and eat its cold, hard, daughter doesn't call you on Christmas, crunchy ceramic too. Agreed. There's a few things going on here and they're all unpleasant. 1. The mother took something, the first cupcake, that OP put energy and caring into creating. She did it because she could, and very likely because she knew her daughter valued it. Sometimes people want things not because they like them, but because they know someone else does, and they find joy in taking that thing away. 2. The mother knew OP had a new thing that she valued, something someone who loves OP gave her. The mother knew this, and once again wanted to take away the thing that made OP happy. This time, it wasn't completely about the cupcake. This time, it was about someone else showing OP she was loved. OP's mother wanted to take that away also. 3. OP's mother would have known her daughter was studying for final exams. She would have known that taking the cupcake would upset OP, and throwing OP off her study, she is interfering in OP's potential exam results and attempting to take something else off OP, her future success. OP's mother seems deeply jealous of the things OP has given or creates for herself and isn't above sabotaging OP's happiness so she can feel powerful. Not the jerk, OP. Keep your mother blocked and don't share your success with her. She'll only try to take it for herself also. Get in, losers. We're complying maliciously. We all do stupid stuff in our 20s. Well, for me, it was moving into a shoddy apartment with my fellow mental health risk friend. We were both well aware that we may have to break lease at some point, so we found an apartment that was just barely within price range and had the option to break the lease early. It was okay at first. There was linoleum peeling up in the bathroom, and if we didn't wipe down the window sills, and particularly the far corner ceiling of my bedroom, then we would get mold. But this is Oregon, and I'm familiar with mold. No biggie. When our washer, which we were paying an extra $100 a month to have in our unit, started leaking, we put in a maintenance request and tack on the peeling linoleum as well, since they'd already be in our unit to fix the washer. They patched up the washer and did a half-attempted job at repairing the patch of linoleum. A month later, the linoleum, since they had not actually fixed the underlying problem of the peeling linoleum, it had come up again. The corner had cut my foot, and the bathroom sink, washer, and dishwasher all had problems of one kind or another. They came in again, said that if we wanted them to fix that patch again, it would cost $450 to replace the whole floor. The patch was like a 2-foot square, so that just never got repaired. 2 months, 3 hospital trips for my roommate, a still broken washer that was unusable, a leaky washer, and a close call later. Roommate has POTS, fell down the stairs. We put in a request for accommodation to be released to our respective parents on the grounds of mental and physical disability. They denied us the request, simply offering to move us to a downstairs apartment. They don't want to let us out of this lease, even though my roommate was in serious danger? Fine. Malicious compliance incoming. I went through the lease agreement to figure out how much it would be to break the lease, and I quote, "Fee to break this lease is $1.50. 1.5 times the rent if left blank." Someone either messed up the paperwork or figured that no one would read it. So I put in a 30-day notice of intent to move out, with $1.50 worth of quarters in the envelope. Aftermath. They tried to tell us we couldn't move out because it is 1.5 times the rent, not $1.50. Threatened us with lawyers, called their bluff, suggested they repaid the lease agreement they signed, paid my half of the repairs, and haven't heard from them in like 3 months. Still keeping all the emails and such in case I get a letter from a lawyer. Still have zero intention to pay that 1.5 times rent. Force me to take a lunch with no one else to open the doors for your employees? Enjoy. Some backstory. Okay, so I'm a grocery assistant manager, and in my supermarket chain, that generally means 2 things, besides what you would expect job functions of such a role to be. 1. Work overnights while we are closed, which I love, and I'm the person with the keys to the store to let employees in and out, which I hate. My shift starts at midnight. They're supposed to schedule 2 key holders during the night shift, specifically so that lunches can be taken. In our state, they are supposed to be taken between the 3rd and 5th hour of work, or the employer must pay an hour of overtime. Well, besides store management, there's myself and 2 other key holders. My fellow assistant, whose schedule they changed to only be overnight on my days off, and a produce clerk, who comes in at 4 a.m. 3 days a week. This means a minimum of 2 days a week, I'm the only key holder on duty during my lunch window. Malicious compliance time. They started bugging me to take a lunch. They were getting flagged from corporate about my overtime hours. I said, "So you want me to work during my lunch to let people in or out?" They aren't dumb enough to say yes to that. They said, "Well, you know what times people are scheduled, so plan in between." They're right, I do know. I know the people who are always early or late. I know the floor cleaning company has no set time they show up. And I know when the smokers are scheduled for their breaks. And I know there is no 30-minute uninterrupted window for me to take a lunch. After telling the store leadership this and them not listening, I decided to show them and started taking my lunch. The first night, a smoker lost it on me for not leaving the break room to let her out during my lunch, and she missed the chance to smoke on her break. I explained my situation to her and got her to redirect her yelling at store management when they showed up. The third night, the floor company called our store during business hours to complain about their rep having to wait outside for 15 minutes to be let in. One night later, a bakery clerk left and went home after them being 5 minutes late meant I wouldn't be answering the door for 20 minutes. That was the last night they made me take a lunch as the only key holder there. It's finally over. I became a horrible neighbor to stop another one. This is amazing. I think it's really over. 3 years ago, my neighbors moved in to the only house that is next to me. We directly share a yard with a thin privacy fence. It all started right after they moved in. Whenever it was not raining, they were in their backyard all day, screaming, shouting, crying, mostly the kids, but the parents too. Also playing music. This didn't bother me. They have a really small backyard, but somehow managed to fit a pool, trampoline, and sandbox in it. Recipe for disaster. When it was raining, I constantly heard bangs through our thick concrete wall because the kids were running electric toy cars into it, the big ones. I know this because one kid slammed into my garage door once. Imagine getting woken up every day by screaming. Whenever you come home from work, screaming. Having dinner, screaming. Well, you get the point. For 2 years, I gave them the benefit of the doubt since we were in lockdown. But start of this year, I asked them to be a bit more considerate. It was in a friendly way, but they got mad and told me to move if I don't like their noise. After that, it only got worse and worse and worse, like they were doing it on purpose. One day they complained because I slammed the door at 12 p.m. Said, okay, sorry for disturbing your peace, but now you know how annoying it can be, so could you also be a bit more considerate? Those are not quiet hours. At this point, it was very obvious that this was some kind of weird power play, and I was done with these clowns. The noise couldn't get worse, so I started retaliating. Installed cameras that were visible. Installed a sound system as close to their yard as I could. Then I started becoming the most noisy neighbor ever in the non-quiet hours. Whenever I heard noise, I started blasting rap music with loud bass, started throwing parties, barbecuing as often as I could. It was actually horrible, and I'm glad I don't have other neighbors. Literally, after a week, the noise started to go down. 2 weeks ago, they asked if we could exchange phone numbers so that we can contact each other when the noise is too much. Haven't been bothered since. I'm obviously very happy, but why are people like this? Why do I have to resort to these childish behaviors just to live in peace? Life lesson learned, I guess. Want proof we are working? Proof you will get. I worked in a bank's back office for over a decade. Towards the end of my stay there, we got detached from one department and moved to another during a general restructure. While there, we get talked down on and called stuck up and unfriendly. Mind you, because of compliance, we sit in a secure environment that allows little interaction to non-staff of the unit. As a result of some beef the head had with us, stemming from not understanding our duties, we got a new unit head who came in with the same attitude, saying we were blowing our jobs out of proportion and that the general opinion is that we were lazy. She wanted to be copied in every mail we sent out, as well as receive all our standard operating procedures, etc. The thing is, in our unit, we had like 5 subunits, and she had no idea. No one had asked us for structure or our job descriptions. They all came with preconceived notions about us. I was tasked with sending the procedures, work manuals, job descriptions, and team strength. We shared all our unit email passwords, and that's when it starts to dawn on her, when she saw one mailbox having over 500 emails and only 3 people attending. Then we started copying her in our mails. In a day, we got no less than 200 mails and sent more than that, and that's one subunit only. So she got copied in everything, every single mail from 5 subunits. In 3 days, she came running, asking us to include her in escalations and relevant mails only. My colleagues, ever mischievous, turned a deaf ear. We continued to copy her for about 3 weeks and even included her in automated responses. She missed her own relevant mails because her box would be filled with over 1,000 emails. After a month, she sent someone to plead that we stop, which we did, somewhat. She opted to be removed from the unit head position after that and gave the department head a report. Safe to say, we got some respect after that. It was just so sad that they treated us as such without any attempt to understand what we did. In the end, occasionally, she would still get copied in like 20 meals a day, till I, later a team lead, asked them to stop. Give me a hard time when I'm serving you and your friends? Okay. Years ago, I worked at a busy corporate sit-down burger restaurant. One day, I'm hustling through the lunch rush, and I have 6 college guys sit down. One flags me over and loudly pronounces that they're ready to order right away. What are you guys having? I ask. Guys? The same guy says with a smirk on his face. Guys? That doesn't sound like a very professional greeting to me. I work at a restaurant too, and if I walked up to a table and asked, "What are you guys having?" my manager would definitely let me know that was inappropriate. The other guys at the table look kind of uncomfortable at this exchange and just silently sit there. The main guy looks around at all of them and keeps going. Why don't you come up to us again and do it right? At this point, I'm looking around at my massive section of tables and getting the distinct feeling I'm going to be at this table forever. I'm trying not to lose my cool, so I smile. Sure, I say, take several steps back and walk up again. Gentlemen, how are you all doing? Ready to order? The main guy smirks and nods. I look directly at him. How about you, Chief? What are you having today? Some of the other guys laugh. He looks angrily at me, but orders his burger and a drink. I get everyone's order and hustle off. I return with drinks a little while later. I set everyone's drinks down and do the main guy last. Here you go, boss. I leave before he can say anything. Through the course of their meal, I call him a bunch of different nicknames every time. You need a refill, pal? How's your burger, buddy? Need more ketchup, bro? Can I get that plate out of your way, dude? Any dessert for you, amigo? Need me to split your check, brother? Make sure to leave me one signed copy, muchacho. So by this time, this guy is boiling. His friends are loving it though. As time has gone on, the rest of them keep looking at me expectantly. What nickname next? Finally, they all get up to leave. Lunch rush has ended, and I'm chilling at this point. I casually walk up to them. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming in. The rest of the group is smiling. I look at the main guy. And you, have a fantastic day, Hoss. The rest of the guys cheer. They all head out. I grab all their receipts on the table. Surprise, surprise, the main guy left me 0 for a tip. I didn't care. It was all worth it. Am I the jerk for telling my brother I wasn't excited about sister-in-law's pregnancy? My brother Matt and his wife Lucy have 6 sons. Their youngest, John, is 2 and was born with a chromosomal abnormality. It's so rare that the doctors aren't entirely sure how this will affect him in the future. Currently, his development is much slower than other kids. Matt and Lucy have been taking him to all sorts of specialists, a speech therapist, and a physical therapist. Their insurance covers some, but not all of this, and the out-of-pocket fees can get pretty hefty. From what I know of their finances, they're not struggling, but they also don't have much to spare. 3 months ago, Lucy announced that they were expecting another kid and made it clear that this wouldn't necessarily be their last. I was immediately concerned, but tried to ignore it and be excited and supportive. I congratulated them, was super enthusiastic at their gender reveal. Basically, I did my best to hide how I felt, but it didn't work. Matt approached me and my boyfriend at a family gathering to ask what was wrong and why I seemed more thrilled about our sister's puppy than his wife's pregnancy. I tried to play it off like it was nothing and I just had a lot on my plate, but he was insistent. My boyfriend tried to deflect by joking that I had run out of ways to show my excitement the 7th time around, and boy, did Matt not like that. I decided to just come clean and tell Matt that I knew I had no right to tell him how many kids he could have and that I would love my new nephew just as much as the rest of my nephews. But I assumed he would stop having kids after John so that they could focus as much time and resources on him as possible. He was upset and said that just because John has a special need doesn't mean other kids will. I explained to him that I was more worried about them having enough money to afford the best possible doctors and therapists for John and enough time and energy to advocate for him and help him. He said they always wanted a big family and John doesn't change that, and they can always get the older kids to look after the younger ones when something with John comes up. I said 6 kids already is a big family, and it was unfair to expect that of his older kids. He blew up and told me I had no idea what I was talking about because I don't have kids, and I probably won't since I overthink so much. I would talk myself out of having them for even the smallest of risks. And when you have kids, you just make it work. I told him I don't think assuming he could just make it work was a good idea, and I was sorry, but I couldn't force myself to be excited when he hadn't said anything to ease my concerns, and that maybe I was a bit more excited about our sister's new puppy because she triple-checked that she had the finances, time, and appropriate environment before adopting. He grabbed Lucy and stormed off, and I haven't heard from them since. I texted an apology because they won't take my calls. Edit. Thank you all so much for weighing in. I really do appreciate it. I've seen and read some comments saying I think John is a burden/unloved, and I was basically telling him to not have the baby. I just wanted to say that that is not the case at all. I adore John. He's my godson and such a smiley, sweet blessing of a baby, and I'm sure I'll feel the same about my new nephew. My concern is coming from the fact that we have no idea what John's future will look like. Some people with this condition are adults who are living independently, while others require care for the rest of their lives. Just because John has needs that their other kids don't doesn't make him a burden. Burden implies that we're not happy to give John everything he might need or want, and that couldn't be further from the truth. My boyfriend played video games the whole night, so I left. So I'm 29, female, and my boyfriend is 30. He's a gamer. And don't get me wrong, I play video games myself and really enjoy spending my time playing video games. But since my boyfriend lives quite far away, we only see each other once a week. That's our quality time together. Yesterday, I worked the whole day, went to the gym, and then drove over to my boyfriend's house. I arrived there at 7-ish. When I came in, he was playing video games with his friends. No biggie. I told him I'm gonna take a shower and be right out. When I came back, he wasn't playing anymore, and instead asked if I'm hungry and wanted to order some food. I thought he stopped playing and we're gonna spend some time together now, but no. He ordered food and went right back to gaming. At about 9-ish, our food arrived. He was still playing. Fixed myself a plate, sat down to eat. He didn't join me. After I finished, I just got my stuff and told him I'm gonna leave because I'm not spending my evening watching him play video games. He finally took off his headset and told me, "Well, you could have said something. I was about to stop anyways." I told him that I feel like it's common sense to not be playing video games when your girlfriend visits you, and left. I was there for 2 hours, and the whole time he was playing. He hasn't tried to contact me in any way since. When I left, it looked like he was super upset, but immediately started talking to his friends again before I was even out the door. And to be honest, I didn't feel like a jerk then, and I don't feel like one now. But the more I talk to my friends about it, the more I feel like I should have said something. Maybe to some people it's not obvious that someone wouldn't want to watch them play video games the whole night. I mean, it should be, but maybe it isn't. Not the jerk. See, with me, I'm the gamer and my boyfriend isn't. Playing video games and talking to your friends while your girlfriend sits next to you waiting for you to finally notice her, that's a major jerk move. Good on you, you left. Hope you had a nice evening without him. And somehow, whenever you say something about someone's gaming habits, it's always, "Well, I was about to turn it off anyways." Not the jerk. It's common sense to stop playing video games when someone comes over to visit. That's just basic respect. And yes, some games can't be paused. Well, bad luck. Then finish the round and turn off the console. Or time manage and don't start another round if you know your girlfriend's gonna be here in a few. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her boyfriend? Please let us know. What kind of dude would rather play video games than hang out with his girlfriend? Guy decided to scam me. Revenge is still pouring on him. First and foremost, this didn't happen in the US. Some events might be pursuable up there, but down here, it was mostly no man's land regarding the kind of scams I fell for. For the sake of this story, here in no man's land, we use the top-level domain, NML. My wife is a nurse. Back then, in the early 2000s, she worked in an ICU of a relatively exclusive and therefore expensive hospital. Specifically, she had to care for patients that had undergone cardiac surgery. At the same time, I was working for a small company that was going out of business. The owners were retiring. We hadn't secured any important contracts lately, and in my country, you have to pay for employee severance unless you file for bankruptcy. So they decided to shut down while they still had enough cash to pay our severances. One day, my wife calls me and tells me about this gentleman in his late 50s that had been on the verge of passing. And after that close call, he was so grateful and stuff. We'll call him Benny Lowy. This gentleman happened to work in electronic imports, which gave him access to incredibly convenient deals. Long story short, he was so grateful he could sell us an LCD TV, a store demo unit that had been used just once, and we'd need to pay like 1/4 of its retail price. as long as we kept it quiet because he was risking his relation with the brand. It caught me off guard. I said yes and she paid. Anyway, the only TV in the house had been a wedding present and weighed over 100 pounds. We were eager to replace it. I was naive, I know, but I thought, being her patient, she knew all the personal data from this guy, so it seemed unlikely he would target her for a scam. His father was a known businessman. Now retired and approaching his 80s, Mr. Lowy Sr. was well respected in his community and wouldn't have let his son wreak havoc. Also, my wife had acquaintances in common with Benny's brother, a known doctor of another hospital. Christmas was approaching. She asked Benny, who had been already discharged and back home, for advice regarding the present she wanted to give me, a phone. He hooked her up with the best she could think of. Now, I can't remember the exact model, but it was the Sony Ericsson flagship, and it wasn't yet offered by local carriers. He had access to it because of his status as a local representative for said brand. She went with it and paid. The job position. I've said my employer was shutting down, so just for the sake of it, she asked Benny if he knew of someone needing an IT guy. Of course, he said. I'll meet your husband at this place tomorrow, etc. And there I was, in a gas station, uptown. He pulled over in a luxury car. Mr. Lowy was a normal-looking guy, used a cane, and had a noticeable knee or hip pain. We sat down in the gas station coffee shop, and he told me about a mid-management position, reporting to him in a mining company I had barely heard about. He coached me on what should I say in the upcoming job interview. We spoke about salary. I was dazzled. Wait, mining? Didn't you say he was into imports? He was that kind of guy you can't pause to question because he had already thrown something extra to the mix, and this position had a better paycheck than the one I was being laid off. In the next days, we had a few phone calls. Stuff looked promising. I had been already laid off. We agreed he'd pick me up on December 24th, and he had introduced me to senior managers as the recommended help desk junior manager. I woke up extra early, put on my best suit, waited in the front yard. Hours went by. I had planned to be back before noon to arrange stuff for that night's dinner because my parents were coming over. After calling him repeatedly, he told me he had been assaulted and robbed. "They took my cane and broke it on my knee," he wailed. Poor guy. I told him to forget about my interview for the time being. No, I promised you. I'll make it up to you." Of course, since he had been injured, he wasn't able to deliver the items my wife bought from him. That night, my mother asked me about the new job. I could not bring myself to tell her about the delay. I told her it was going fine. That night, I Googled him. Nothing showed up except for some awards in the Imports and Customs Associations of whatever. He called me to reschedule our interview, December 31st. Again, picture me in my best suit outside the house on a summer morning. Of course, he didn't show up. When I finally reach him, he tells me that when his car had been stolen last week, they took his wallet too, which these jerks eventually dropped during another robbery, so now he had been detained as a suspect for that. He hadn't been able to pick the imported electronics on the customs office, so they had them moved to another custody unit where it would take a couple of weeks to retrieve. That night, we went to my parents for New Year's Eve, and my mother asked me for the new job. "It's all fine," I said. I Google him again, this time with variations regarding his name or the supposed company he was setting me into. Not much showed up, nothing shady. The next call was like a week later. He told me that, because he was being involved in a police investigation, this mining company had fired him. But this was actually good, because now I was going to be interviewed to take his position as IT manager. This meant double my former paycheck and securing a position that would be a leap forward in my career. So I don't ask many questions. I was just grateful. All those delays in the end would pay off. This situation, as you have already figured out, went on and on for weeks. My interview never happened. The electronics never arrived. We had lost our money, our time, our Christmas, our hopes, and I was still unemployed and hadn't been applying for job offers since I had this one allegedly secured. I texted him somewhere in between. I texted him, "Why are you doing this to us?" He texted back, "If I wanted to, you have nothing on me. But if you stick with me, you'll be rewarded tenfold." Cue in the detective. Time went by. Eventually, my wife overhears from a coworker about this patient in another hospital she was working at. Some nurses do work part-time at other hospitals. She had fallen for it too, but her husband was a detective. So a few hours later, we were filling him in on the details of the scam we fell for. Asking around, he found a third nurse scammed by this guy. Soon enough, he was detained, this time for real, and admitted to scamming people due to an impromptu invented mild dementia. This detective talks him into an off-court deal in which he gave us back every cent, but not my time nor hopes, in exchange for us not pursuing any legal action. This was a decent deal because us, having failed to make a written agreement on any of these purchases, had at most a weak claim to our money. By the way, the money with which he paid us, he had to borrow from his father and some from his brother, the doctor. Remember, this didn't happen in the US. This agreement is actually completely legal down here. So I made a blog. I couldn't go for any further legal action, but there wasn't a non-disclosure agreement whatsoever. And I thought, what could prevent other people from falling into this scammer's lies? Well, perhaps some Google results. So I created a blog on WordPress. It was a single post in third person telling my story. In the following days, that post's comments had a dozen stories much like mine. I made them into posts. A few of them got their comments too, telling other people's stories. In a few weeks, looking for Benny Lowey's name on Google led to this blog. In my country, you can review updates regarding court ongoing cases, except for felonies that are non-public. Searching for his national ID, which I had known thanks to our settlement, as the sued party, I could just find an eviction action due to failing to pay his condo's lease. But looking for him as the suing part, I found out he had sued WordPress.nml, our local fictionary domain, which was registered by a local guy on GoDaddy.com. Following up with this case, this guy had spent months trying to demonstrate this local guy had to take down the blog I made on the domain. Go figure. I was tempted then and there to set a post on this blog saying, if I wanted to, you have nothing on me. However, I have never attempted to let him know who's doing this. I just log in on the blog once in a while. Today was the first one in years, and keep finding, in the comments, more scammed people. All of them in a vulnerable moment of their life. Unemployed guys, small startups looking for an angel investor, small branch salespeople pursuing a promising commission. Those who have, in time, reached a compensation or agreement. It's because Benny's now ancient father had to chip in. From what they say, his brother has gone no contact. Most of the commenters leave their email addresses, and I've known of a few that have teamed with each other and succeeded in legal actions. Husband trying to financially edge me out of my expensive hobby. The backstory. My husband and I have always had joint accounts, and up until last year when our third kid was born, we made about the same amount of money. We made the decision that I would leave my full-time job and work PRN so we could avoid the cost of daycare. This has cut my income in half. In addition, last year my husband started running a successful eBay store. He opened a separate account that I have no access to at all, and he started taking extra money from his paychecks each week and depositing it into that account as well. He uses that money on whatever he wants. I manage our finances, budget, and pay all of our bills. I don't have a separate personal account, so all of my money is poured into our mutual accounts, and he can see all of my spending. I keep spreadsheets that he has full access to but never looks at. We have savings and basically no debt aside from a mortgage and my student loans. And now, I'm a very active jiu-jitsu competitor and go to tournaments frequently. I would probably call Brazilian jiu-jitsu an expensive hobby. The last few weeks, several entry fees came due at once, totaling close to $600. I've always cleared it with him that I'm going to do a certain tournament before I sign up, and then I build the fees into the budget. This was no different. And other than jiu-jitsu, I don't really spend money on anything else. He texted me while I was at work yesterday saying, "Not really happy about your excessive spending recently. I think you should get your own account with an allowance to pay for this stuff." This was shocking to me because this has never been a problem until yesterday, and I've never spent so much money on Brazilian jiu-jitsu that we can't save or pay our bills. Then he told me that he bought a car a few weeks ago with his personal funds. I feel like he's trying to control me and financially edge me out of my hobby that he knows I love. I can give myself an allowance out of each of my paychecks, but I make a lot less money than him, and pretty much all of it goes to bills, so it would take me longer to save for each tournament, and I would have to do way fewer per year. If I want to do jiu-jitsu, I have to rely financially on him to do so. And again, it's never been a problem until yesterday, because up until last year, I made just as much money as him. Our mutual decision for me to leave my job only affects my paycheck. He can spend money on whatever he wants, like a car, without any oversight or accountability because he has his eBay store that he makes money from each month. He never tells me, but I'd say it's probably about $1,000 a month. Anyway, it started a big fight. He said he doesn't have to rely on me financially for his hobbies, so I shouldn't have to rely on him financially for mine. That our mutual money should go to bills and the kids only. Who's the jerk? Not the jerk. I would be hightailing it back to full-time work, and he can start contributing to daycare for the kids if he suddenly thinks your quality of life should diminish with your income. Your contribution to the household is far more than just the dollars and cents, but if he's trying to make it about the raw numbers, things aren't going right and you need to protect yourself. Until his day job is allowing him to conduct his eBay business during his work hours, his side hustle is costing your family, so he can't just claim it's his to keep. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her husband? Please let us know. Am I the jerk for telling my grandparents that my parents kicked me out? I'm 18, male. A few weeks ago it was my birthday and I turned 18. As soon as I turned 18, at midnight, while I was sleeping in my room, my dad knocked on the door, turned the lights on, pulled my blanket off, and told me to get up and get out of my house now that you're 18. I already knew I was going to be kicked out at 18, as my mom and dad often mentioned to me in the house, "When you're 18, you're out of the house." Or they'd say something like, "I can't wait till your mother and I get some alone and quiet time when you leave the house at 18. They already had plans to kick me out before anyways, so I already knew it. But I wasn't worried, as I have a good/decent savings amount of $5,000 I earned from freelancing on the side. And ever since I turned 18, I've been making a decent income as well as working full-time now. I can afford an apartment in my area and essentials and some nice stuff as well. So that day that I got kicked out, I packed all my stuff in a suitcase. I left, I slept the night at my friend's house, woke up, and same day I arranged an apartment through a landlord I know personally. Now I have my own apartment and I'm living by myself. Today I had a group FaceTime call where my grandparents, aunt, uncle, mom, dad, etc. were all on the FaceTime call. My grandpa asks, "So, OP, your father told me you moved out right now to attend college. Which college are you attending?" I told my grandpa, "No, I didn't move out to attend college. I moved out because I was kicked out." My grandpa's face immediately turned from a happy, smiling face to an angry, shocked face, and he basically went off on my mom and dad. Man said words that I've never heard of before. He scolded my parents for like 2 hours live on FaceTime with all of our relatives on the group FaceTime call. After the group FaceTime ended, my mom and dad gave me a call personally, and they were mad. They said, "Never before has your grandpa insulted us. Today he did because of you, jerk." So, am I the jerk for telling my grandparents that I got kicked out? Not the jerk. Who does this to their own kid on their 18th birthday? They lied because they knew how their actions would look to others. If they were embarrassed, then they only have themselves to blame. I'm glad you told your grandparents the truth, and I'm so sorry that your 18th birthday was so rubbish. Hopefully you can celebrate your birthday as well as leaving your parents behind with your friends soon. That's if you haven't already. Am I the jerk for taking my baby to see my family against my wife's wishes? We came home from the hospital 5 weeks ago with our firstborn, a boy. For the next 4 weeks, my wife did not let any of my family visit our son. Her mother and sister came over several times a week. My wife refuses to let my family see him because she doesn't want to play host. My family understands that being a new mom is stressful and they have no expectations of being treated like proper guests. I told her it's not fair that her family can come and go as they please, but my family can't even meet him. She said her family comes over to help her, which is not really true. They just hold the baby a little, and if the baby isn't sleeping, then I'm the one taking care of him while they're here. They don't clean or anything. At most, they might bring some takeout on the way over. Finally, I decided I will be taking the baby to see my parents last weekend. I got all the formula and diapers and everything I would need for a couple days and packed a bag. I thought this was a win-win because my wife could have some time to herself or come along and she would be under no pressure to host anyone. But she got mad when I told her what I would do. But I told her this was happening. I am the baby's father and my family has a right to see him just as much as hers. She refused to come along and said she can't believe I'm treating a new mother this way. I left on Friday evening and didn't hear anything from my wife on Saturday, but her sister and mom were over and sent a bunch of texts basically accusing me of mistreating her. Finally, on Sunday, she started sending me text after text on how I was a terrible husband, how I had taken her son, how a baby can't be separated from its mother, etc. It got so bad that I cut my visit short and drove home. She was very mad when I got home and refused to speak to me. The next day, when the baby was asleep, I set her down and tried to calmly explain to her that I am the father of the baby, so I have as much right to where he goes and who he sees as she does. We are equal parents, and she needs to accept reasonable compromises when we disagree. like my family being able to see our son and she not having to host them. She called me a jerk and shouted that she gets more say because she's the one who is pregnant with him. At that point, I said if she thinks that way and the accusation she texted me, I think she really needs to see a doctor and get assessed for PPD because her behavior is not normal. She called me a jerk and said I was mistreating my position as the earner. Money was never part of any discussion. She has been giving me a near-silent treatment all week, resisting any attempts to discuss therapy, and her sister has texted me saying I should apologize to her for what I said. I told her sister that I had said absolutely nothing wrong in response to being accused of taking the baby and being a lesser parent to my son. I'm standing my ground, but I need an outside perspective. Am I the jerk? Edit. To clarify, the idea my wife might have PPD did not occur to me until after the visit with my family. Edit 2. My wife knew of my plan to visit my family several days in advance. I planned a weekend trip because they are several hours away. Edit 3. I want to emphasize this because people keep asking about it. I did not want to separate my son from his mother. I wanted her to come with us. She refused. I did not forcibly take him away from her. It was her decision not to come along and her decision not to allow my family to come to her. Edit 4. My wife is not physically handicapped from childbirth. She's been mobile and going out, including a 6-hour car ride 2 weeks ago. Edit 5. My wife refused any options involving my family coming over. No hotels or in-town visits. An overnight visit to your family's home, over her objections as well, is very different from her family coming to visit for a few hours. You can easily imagine how your equivalency argument would be perceived by a judge if it got to that point. The more reasonable compromise was to invite your family over to a porch visit, for which you'd prepare all snacks, etc., and give your wife notice so she can plan to A. Stay inside, B. Be elsewhere, or C. Join in on the visit. You have equal say in who is invited onto the property. That would have made a more defensible compromise than taking the infant out of the home overnight and away from the mother. You're the jerk. OP. She did not want them in town or at the house at all. This was emphasized in my repeated attempts to compromise with her. She felt that no matter what, if they were close, she would have to host. Why is everyone acting like she doesn't have a right to feel how she feels about the in-laws? They aren't her parents. Therefore, she will never be as comfortable with them as she is with hers. And she's at the weakest point of her life right now, trying to heal. Edit. I just don't believe this guy is telling the truth. He has some kind of excuse or situation as an answer to any and all objections. An insane amount of, oh, well, she did this, so that makes this okay, replies to even seem like a real situation at this point. He took the baby away from her. She never did that to him. There are clearly 3 sides to this story. His, hers, and the truth. Everyone sucks here. Unless there's more to this story, wife's stance is either irrational or unreasonable. That said, husband's decision to whisk the baby away for multiple days instead of perhaps a day or at most an overnight trip without wife's consent is also unreasonable in my opinion. Comment about needing to see a therapist may have been well-intentioned but didn't come across that way. Therapists or lawyers, the husband or wife are going to be talking to one, the other, or both soon. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his wife? Please let us know. Either she is totally unwilling to compromise, or there's more to this story than we're being told. Am I the jerk for telling my daughter she has to pay $200 a month extra rent, or I'll kick her out after she made me lose my bonus? I, 53 female, have a daughter, Maisie, who's 23, who lives with me. For my work, I'm a manager at a fast food chain that I've worked at for 31 years. Due to my long time with the company, I was awarded an extra $200 bonus if my shop took enough money and I know the owner well. However, I was asked by him not to tell anyone about the bonus, or he would have to take it away, as everyone else would demand the same. I agreed to this and said I wouldn't tell anyone, and I didn't. I'm on good terms with him and we follow each other on social media, so I refrained from telling Maisie as she can't keep secrets well. But last month, around a year after I got the bonus, my daughter found out that I had managed to pay off a credit card and wanted to know how, as I didn't think I'd pay it off for another year. I told her the interest had gone down, but she didn't believe me and kept pestering me about it for days. I finally told her I would tell her if she wouldn't tell anyone else, so I told her I got a raise at work. Despite having the bonus for a year, my daughter wanted to get dinner to celebrate, so we went to her favorite restaurant, which is quite pricey. She took a picture of our meals and tagged me on the Facebook with the caption, "Mom got a pay raise, money emojis," which in her words, she thought nobody would notice, as nobody uses Facebook anymore. Sadly, I didn't notice until the morning after, but the damage was already done. The owner called me into his office and was very sincere when he told me he couldn't give me the bonus anymore, as a colleague had complained having seen the post. I also apologized, saying I kept it a secret as long as I could, as I know my daughter can't keep secrets well. When I got home, I demanded her to remove the post and told her she lost me $200 a month. She felt bad, but she told me it wasn't her fault, as I didn't tell her the full extent of the pay raise and how it was so much money. I told her that unless she starts paying me $200 a month extra, that she will have to find somewhere else to live to make up for it. My oldest, Mia, who's 26, thinks I'm being harsh on her and that it was my fault for telling her, as I know what she's like. However, my daughter pays $200 a month rent and spends the rest of her money on luxury items like expensive bags, perfume, and makeup. I'm not demanding she pay an unreasonable amount. If anything, $400 a month is incredibly cheap compared to other house prices. Am I the jerk for demanding my daughter pay $200 a month extra rent, or I'll kick her out? Your boss is the jerk for making the bonus so secret and conditional, and for removing it like that. I don't know if that's normal in the kind of industry you're in or the country, but in mine, that would be illegal actually. I don't know why you're focusing more on your kid than on the unfair labor practice. Yes, she was wrong for posting if you told her not to do so, and sure, charge her what she cost you. But she's not the villain in my eyes, nor are you. Not the jerk. Also, it's literally illegal in the US, federally illegal, to forbid employees from discussing their wages with their coworkers and/or to penalize them for doing so. You can literally take it to the Department of Labor and they will probably either get your pay reinstated or get you a settlement. Am I the jerk for losing it after finding out my wife let her sister and her boyfriend stay at my late wife's cabin? My late wife, while she was still with us, lived a healthy life and always loved spending time traveling and going on road trips. She was always an outdoor person, although she had a demanding career. She had a high-paying job while I was earning money that barely paid for bills. We were married for 5 years. We bought a cabin together that we used for holidays and weekends. After her passing, I couldn't set a foot in it for a whole year. Everything was the way she had left it. I don't go there often, but only on big occasions when I need to feel closer to her. My family suggested I sell it, but I couldn't bring myself to do that. The idea of selling it makes me feel like I was losing her all over again, so I left it as it is. I married my now wife 6 months ago. I have 2 stepkids that are filling my days with joy and comfort. But lately, my in-laws have been having issues, specifically my sister-in-law. She lost her job, and she and her boyfriend had nowhere to live. We've invited them to our place for 2 months, then my brother-in-law took them in. My wife, days ago, told me brother-in-law had an argument with his sister and kicked her and boyfriend out. I asked when that happened, and she told me about 2 weeks ago. I then asked where her sister and her boyfriend were staying, and she took her time to answer. I asked what's wrong, and she flat out told me that her sister's been staying at my late wife's cabin for 2 weeks now. I was stunned when I heard, and I asked her for more clarification. She said she gave her sister a copy of the key to the cabin to stay there till she finds a job. Then proceeded to say she didn't tell me because it wasn't a huge deal. I couldn't help but lose my temper. I told her she had no right to hide this from me and let her sister into the cabin knowing how I'd feel about it. She said my reaction was the exact reason why she hid it from me. I called her selfish and inconsiderate of my feelings, but she argued about wanting to help her younger sister and said I was the selfish one for not helping family during tough times. The kids walked into the kitchen. I just stopped arguing and walked out. My wife followed me. I demanded she call her sister and tell her to move out and hand over the key. My wife looked shocked, saying she expected me to react this way, but not go as far as to demand that her sister moves out, and called me cruel for making her look bad to family. We kept arguing till her sister moved out and brought the key. My wife packed her things and went to stay with her parents. She told me that my late wife was obviously more important to me than my family and that she won't come home till I get my priorities straight. I haven't visited the cabin after her sister left. I haven't been feeling well these days, and I'm not ready to go see how the place looks now. I just need time to calm myself down to be able to go there. My wife is at her parents' house, and she took the kids with her. I miss the kids, and she won't let me speak to them, which is another problem because my heart literally feels heavy when I'm away from them. I miss them so much and can't stand the house without them there. Do this next. Tap here on your screen to come see our new podcast playlist, where you'll find thousands of hours of the best stories you've ever heard.
or tap the one on the right. That episode is specifically just for you, based on other videos you've enjoyed the most.